Did the cleaning person come back before you went to lunch?
Yes, I believe it was. Up there, you mean?
Oh, she
Yeah.
did?
Yeah,
Okay.
I thought she did. I
didn't see her.
thought she came in and cleaned.
Okay.
How are you today?
How you doing?
Well.
Oh.
Are you going to get it?
Probably.
Yes.
Maybe. This will be the last one. I'll have to probably finish up this one. And then we have more. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
You feel about the one?
Unless we get them all. Like 1:30.
Yep. Excuse me. Here. If it isn't nice, I'm guessing the house. I'll find out. I'll let you know.
So I'm gonna ask you. Do you want to use state sanitizer?
It didn't look like it was open.
No, it is.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay.
I was like,
And
you
that's-
can't even use the state
And
sanitizer.
that's the one I've been using, because I'm not gonna touch it to see. No, I'm not doing that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna manipulate it.
I got it.
Government says.
No, feel some kind of way that you have rejected our grapefruit scent.
Let me tell you, I had go gadget on. I didn't tell them go get this second one, but they're a little short over here. I said, hey, I'm coming in and out. But I like the reversing those much better than that one.
Yeah, I used it this morning before
I don't even like grapefruit.
I was just gathering my stuff up. Before I was that smells pretty good. So
Oh my goodness, I don't touch doors, I don't touch candles, I use pens, I use.
yeah, like
My
he's
kid knows, like, we don't use grapefruit. We don't use it. No.
I have one of these heat like things that you can use
Yeah, I have one
to
too.
push buttons and
Yeah.
I don't know around there, yeah, but if you've got one of those.
It's like a hook.
It's not like quite like a pointed hook, but it's got like a little, it's kind of like key, and you can use it to open doors and stuff and press buttons without having to touch it, and then that can just be wiped off with, weird stuff. That's a whole kind of I think it would only be there's a chance to
Yeah, it's gonna be something big.
Remain seated, come to order. Superior Court of Henry County back in session.
All right. Y'all ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Everybody here, let's call our next witness.
All right, this time the state calls Captain Jeff Maddox.
Thank you. Sometimes a lot of people forget to put their phone in that silent mode. You might want to check. I've got mine taken care of. Come on up, sir. You can sit down and take a look. That's fine. Raise
Oh,
your
I'm
right-
sorry. I can stand it.
All right, raise your right hand.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can have a
You
seat.
can be seated and take your mask off so we can hear you better. Make sure you're close enough to the microphone.
Yes, sir.
We will not bite you.
Oh, yes, sir.
And state your name for the record. Tell you about that.
My name is Jeffrey Maddox, Jeffreymaddox.
Okay, and how are you employed?
With Henry County Police Department.
And in what capacity do you work for Henry County Police Department?
Right now, I'm a captain over the North Precinct
Okay. And how long have you been with Henry County Police Department?
since 1997.
Were you employed by the Henry County Police Department back in 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically on October 27th, 2016, were you working that day?
Yes, ma'am. I was on duty. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in the morning hours, around 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock that morning, did you respond at any point to 3300 Highway 81?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. Can you tell the court why you responded there?
I was on regular patrol and I was actually assigned to the North Precinct at that time as well as a lieutenant, but I heard some radio traffic about a vehicle that had been located that had been looking for, and they might need some additional units, so I headed that way because at that time I was also the SWAT team commander.
And when you arrived there, were there other officers already there?
There were several other officers there already. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you arrived, did you see any of the folks who had been there, been in that Jeep?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall where any of them were?
No, ma'am, not exactly. They were still kind of up around the Jeep in that area, if I remember correctly.
Now, were y'all there looking for Jacob Koski?
Yes, ma'am.
And in order to do so, did you need to clear the house to see if Jacob Koski was in the house?
Objection leading.
Well, Your Honor, the leading question suggests an answer. The answer could be yes, the answer could be no, the answer could be maybe, the answer could be I don't know, I don't remember. I'm not suggesting any
Or
answer.
the answer could be, would you restate your question?
I
So
can do it.
I'm going to rule the objection here, but express here. I don't think that's troublesome to have, even if it were legal, it's not. Go ahead.
Can you say that again?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
In looking for Jacob Koski, did you need to clear the house in order to see if Mr. Koski was in the house?
Yes, ma'am. That's fine.
Okay. And did you participate in the clearing of the house?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. And can you tell the judge how that occurred?
A decision had been made to ask for permission to go in the home. I believe it was by a different person, Bolton. And we just needed additional manpower to do that. So once we had enough people who we felt like to do the search of the home, we went inside after permission had already been received and did the search of the home for Mr. Koski.
Okay. And do you recall approximately how many officers went in the home?
Not exactly, but it probably been about 5 or 6 or so.
And were you one of those officers?
I was, yes, ma'am.
Were y'all able to locate Mr. Koski in the house?
No, ma'am.
Was there anyone in the house that you recall?
After we had a female and a small infant come outside before we went in, there was no additional persons inside the home. No.
Do you recall any dogs being present?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell the judge where was that?
Believe me, we found him over it would have been more like a garage area, I believe it was, or like kitchen garage area. I remember it being to the left side. I don't remember exactly how the home was laid out, but he was very, very aggressive, and we actually needed some assistance with him, so we didn't hurt him or we didn't get hurt.
Okay. Did someone come in and assist you in that way?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you recall who that was?
Mr. Baker.
And is that Matthew Baker?
Yes, ma'am, Matthew Baker.
Okay. When Mr. Baker came into the house, was he in handcuffs?
Not at that time, because he was going to be assisting us with the dog there.
And once he assisted you with the dog, did he stay in the house or did he leave the house?
He went back outside.
Once you all cleared the house, did you stay in the house or did you leave the house?
We pretty much rounded up and got back out of the house immediately.
Once you all determined that Jacob Koski was not in the house or, to the best of your knowledge, on the property, was everyone who had been handcuffed unhandcuffed?
Yes, ma'am.
And once everyone was unhandcuffed, was anyone in any way forced to go anywhere?
Not that I know of. I left fairly shortly after I walked back outside, and once the Criminal Investigation Division kind of started getting involved.
So were you present when CID detectives appeared at the scene?
Yes, ma'am. Some of those had arrived once we first got there, but there were more once we come back outside, and I knew that they were fixing to take over basically what we were doing, so I left.
Okay. And at the time that you left, did it appear that anyone was detained any longer?
It did not appear to me.
And did you interview anybody or talk to Matthew Baker there at the scene?
No.
You know, question him about anything?
Oh, no, ma'am.
How long would you say that you were there from the time that you got there and people, from the time that you got there until the time that you left? Let's do it that way. How long would you say you were there the whole time?
I would have to guess. I would say 30 minutes or less for me.
And so was your whole purpose there to secure the scene, make sure that everything was okay, and look for Jacob Koski?
I played a part in that, yes, ma'am. That was my purpose.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
All right.
Good afternoon, Captain Maddox. How are you?
I'm good, ma'am. Thank you.
My name's Christina Rudy. I'm one of the lawyers that represents Mr. Baker. If at any time during our conversation, if you can't hear me, just ask me to raise my voice and I will.
Yes, ma'am. No problem.
Are you post-certified, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were post-certified back in 2016, right?
Yes, ma'am.
When you arrived, how were you dressed? Were you dressed like you are now in a uniform with a badge, or were you in plain clothes?
In a uniform.
And did you have a firearm with you at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it a pistol or was it a rifle?
A pistol.
And when you arrived, did you have the lights and sirens activated on your car? Do you recall?
I don't remember if I did.
Do you remember whether your vehicle was a marked patrol car or an unmarked patrol car?
It was marked car.
When you exited your vehicle, did you draw your firearm?
No, ma'am.
The individuals that you saw in the driveway, were they in handcuffs?
As best I remember, yes, ma'am.
And did you place any of those individuals in handcuffs?
I did not.
Did you at any point remove the handcuffs from any of those individuals?
I did not.
Did you see anybody remove the handcuffs from those individuals?
No, ma'am.
You were at that time, you were the SWAT commander. Do I have that one right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you arrived, you were part of the stack up that entered into the residence, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you the one that coordinated with Mr. Baker to secure the dog?
That happened when I was already inside. Somebody coordinated that we needed assistance with the dog.
And when Mr. Baker entered the home to secure the dog, there was an officer with him, right?
The best I remember, yes, ma'am.
And when he left the residence, there was an officer that escorted him out, right?
I believe it was, yes, ma'am.
Mr. Baker wouldn't have been able to wander free in that residence, would he?
No, ma'am.
About how many officers would you say were on the scene when you arrived?
I would have to just completely guess, but I can say that there were several there.
Okay. I certainly don't want to ask you to guess. And they were all there were multiple police cars there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And some of them were marked and some of them were unmarked, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And there were a number of police officers there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And some were in uniforms and there were some that were not, right?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
But all of the police officers would have firearms on them, right?
They should, yes, ma'am.
Did you see any of, when you entered the home, you had your firearm drawn when you were clearing the residence, right?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
When you cleared the residence, did you have your pistol with you or did you have a rifle with you?
I only had my pistol with me the entire time.
Okay. Do you know if any of the other people that were in that entry group had a rifle with them or was everybody using pistols?
I don't exactly
You don't
remember
recall?
who had what at that time.
Sure. Your marked patrol car, when you activate the lights and sirens, does it have a system that automatically starts recording from a dash cam?
My car was not equipped with that. As a shift lieutenant, I didn't have that in my car.
Okay. Yours wasn't equipped with that. Okay. Did you at any point have a conversation with any of the individuals that were detained outside of that Jeep?
I don't believe I did, no, ma'am.
If I may have just one moment. I just have one additional question. As the shift lieutenant, do you have any recollection of how the other police vehicles, other than your car as a supervisor, were those vehicles equipped with dash cams that automatically activated when lights and sirens were activated?
In this time frame, our patrol units were equipped. I don't remember if it was our newer system with our body cams attachments. I don't believe we had body cams at the time. I'm pretty sure we didn't in the 2016 era, but I do know that most of the patrolmen with their patrol units would have had cameras of some sort that would have probably been activated.
Okay. Just following up on that a little bit, when a patrol unit had that recording system activated, what would happen with those recordings?
They all were kept via probably like an iCloud system. Again, we've changed systems a couple times.
Sure.
So I'm not avoiding your question, but to be right honest with you, in 2016, I don't remember the exact system we had. I know that we have dash cams. At one point, all the videos were collected via VHS tapes. Then we moved up to like an iCloud system, and now we've moved into a dual body cam system where it's uploaded through a company called Visual Labs. But Visual Labs wasn't in use, I'm pretty sure in 2016, so.
So Visual Labs wasn't the company, so it would have been, to the best of your memory, either that virtual cloud system, or it would have been saved to some sort of tape or disc in the patrol unit.
It would have been, yes.
Okay.
That was the standard procedure we operated under.
And to the best of your memory, nobody in October of 2016 had the body-worn cameras that most officers have today. Is that right?
I'm fairly certain we did not have body-worn cameras at that time.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you, officer.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Captain Maddox, when you arrived, you said you weren't sure if you had your lights and sirens on. When you were there on the scene, were sirens blaring at the scene?
I could hear some in the distance because I was not the last one there, but I wasn't the first one there. So people were responding in emergency mode.
Okay. And then once they got to the scene, meaning they're in front of the house or near the house, were the sirens still going, or once officers arrived, they were turning their sirens off?
No, they were turning them off. They wouldn't have left them on.
You testified earlier on cross that you didn't specifically see anyone remove any handcuffs, but were any of the individuals that had been cuffed still cuffed, or had they all been uncuffed at some point?
Well, once we walked outside, I think it was Major Bolton was the one that said everybody needed to be unhandcuffed, and I know that process was getting started immediately upon us exiting the home. I wasn't really paying attention to those that were cuffed because they were in various places. Some of them were down by the street and some of them were in the driveway moving back around. I was making sure we had our equipment, making sure we were getting things back in order, and making sure that the officers that didn't need to be there any longer were kind of getting along and getting back to their cars so we could kind of get the road back open and get some cars moved around, because we had a lot of officers there, quite a few, with vehicles, some in the road and some out of the road.
Okay. And you testified earlier that at that time, Henry County Police Department did not issue body cameras to officers back in 2016.
I'm fairly certain, I would have to go do some research, but I'm fairly certain we did not have body cameras yet at that point. I think that was sometime later that we instituted the body cam system.
Okay. And if any officers did have a body cam system, that would have been, did some officers have their own personal body cam system?
I do know of some officers that had some type of recording devices. Some had some on their glasses, and some they wore with their lapel, but that would have been a personal thing. That was not a departmental issue at that moment.
That's all the questions I had, Your Honor.
Recross?
If I have one. I do have just one question, Captain Maddox. Do you know or recall whether any of the officers that responded to 3300 Highway 81 on the morning of October 27, 2016 had their own personal body camera systems? Do you happen to know?
I'm not real sure. No.
And you didn't have one, did you?
I did not know that.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right, I believe you can step down and remask on your way out and be on call with your cell phone.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I was waiting for the cleaning crew to come in. They're apparently gone for the day.
Lost?
I'm sorry?
Who are we missing?
The cleaning crew. I was waiting for the cleaning crew to come in between witnesses. That's why I didn't call my next witness, but apparently they're gone.
Gone for the day?
Apparently.
That doesn't make any sense.
I agree.
I'll see if I can locate some supplies.
Find somebody that doesn't mind spraying disinfectant. It was Purell, she had gloves on, she had a mask on. We got surface disinfectant, we can spray it ourselves.
Yeah. You want me to do it so we can move on? I'll be happy to.
If you want to.
I don't mind. Let me just go get some paper towels and.
Yes. I guess it's one of those things you have to clarify with them every time they clean. Is this your last, or you gonna be with us this afternoon? I just assumed they were gonna be here all day, that they have to be excused. The last one I had stayed with me all day until we had.
Right.
So I don't understand it. I'm sure it's got the reference, you know it means shake
Shake.
and spray.
I do this at home once in a while.
Yeah. Well, I like to hope that I do it once in a while. Not always the case. There you go. That'll do.
That's it, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, at this time, state calls Major Jason Bolton.
This man is still in its old location. That changed.
Very good, sir.
All right, so I'll give you the oath, you can sit down and take your mask off and state your name for the record and spell it, all right?
Okay. It's
Do you swear-
Jason.
Well, I'll give you the oath.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
one second. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, you can go ahead and have a seat and pull that microphone however you need it. And please go ahead and state and spell your name for the record.
Jason Bolton, Bolton,
Okay, and where are you employed?
Henry County Police Department.
And in what capacity do you work for Henry County Police Department?
I am currently major over the Uniform Patrol Division.
And how long have you been with Henry County Police Department?
I'm about a week shy of 28 years.
Were you employed with Henry County back in October of 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Specifically on October 27th, 2016, did you respond to 3300 Highway 81 East in McDonough?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you recall, or can you tell the court, why did you respond to that location?
I believe one of our officers, Officer Fergoli, had located a vehicle that we had been given a lookout for that was supposedly occupied by a murder suspect from an incident that had occurred early that morning. And he had spotted that vehicle and was following it, and multiple officers were en route to his location to assist.
And specifically, do you recall, did you know about the name Jacob Koski?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and were you under the impression that Jacob Koski at that point was the suspect, or one of the suspects at least, in the triple homicide where the fourth victim was in the hospital?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
When you arrived to that location, were you looking for Jacob Koski?
Yes, ma'am, we were.
At any point, did you go into the home there at 3300 Highway 81 to look for Jacob Koski?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Okay. Did you speak to anyone beforehand to tell them that you were going into the home or asked to go into the home? How did that happen?
Yes, ma'am. Upon my arrival, I think the individuals that were inside or around the vehicle had been detained. Police, I believe I made contact via phone with an individual, a female, who was inside the home, I believe with an infant. And I told her what was going on, asked her to come out and gain consent from her to go in and clear the house for the Jacob Koski's suspect.
Okay. And when you went into the house, how many of y'all went in? Do you recall? About how many?
5 or 6.
And did y'all have firearms with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have your guns drawn?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, why?
Because we were looking for a murder suspect who had allegedly just killed multiple people early that morning.
And just to be clear, when you said earlier that morning, this is the same day that this happened.
I believe so, yes, ma'am. I believe it occurred the night before or early in the morning hours.
When you went into the home, did you find Jacob Koski in there?
We did not.
Did you encounter anyone else in the home?
I don't believe so. I believe once the female and the child came out of the house, it was empty at that point.
At any point prior to going into the home, did you see any folks in and around the driveway near the Jeep?
Yes, ma'am.
Were any of those folks at that point detained?
They were at that point, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And why?
Because we were looking for a murder suspect who was reported to have been in a white Jeep Cherokee, which was the vehicle Officer Fagoli observed and followed back to the house. And not knowing if Koski was in that vehicle or at that home, everyone in that vehicle and around that vehicle was detained until we could determine if Koski was there.
And then once you were able to determine that Jacob Koski was not there, were those folks still detained at that point?
No, ma'am. At that point, I believe I unhandcuffed one of the individuals in order for the rest of them to be unhandcuffed.
And was your order to unhandcuff everyone, was that order obeyed?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, are you able to testify as to which officers unhandcuffed which individuals specifically?
I do not recall. There was a number of us out there, and I don't remember specifically. I believe I unhandcuffed one of the individuals that was in the back of one of the cars to kind of start the process, though.
Okay. But you can say with certainty, can't say who unhandcuffed them, but you can say with certainty that they were unhandcuffed.
Yes, ma'am.
And when they were unhandcuffed, at that point their detention was over?
That's correct.
At that point, was anyone forced to go anywhere or sit anywhere or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And at that point, based on your observations, did the folks that had been handcuffed, were they kind of just milling around at the house, in the yard, in the driveway, that area?
They were. They were very inquisitive and asking a lot of questions. Very curious as to why we were there.
And so did any of them hesitate in asking any of those questions?
No, ma'am.
At any point, did detectives from CID arrive at the house?
They did. Shortly after we finished clearing the home and unhandcuffed the individual, detectives arrived shortly thereafter.
Did you participate in anyone going to the police department for interviews?
Other than just asking officers to give them rides to headquarters for the detectives.
Okay, and when you asked them to give them rides, was that something that were you ordering these folks that they had to go to the police department to have an interview?
No, ma'am.
Had they been asked if they would be willing to have an interview?
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically, Matthew Baker, was he in any way forced to get into a police car and go to the police department?
No, ma'am, we didn't have charges on anybody at that scene at the time.
And so anyone that went to the police department based on your observations, did they appear to go freely and willingly and voluntarily?
Yes, ma'am.
Based on your observations, did anyone appear to not want to go or appear to in any way try to indicate that they didn't want to go?
No, ma'am.
Once you asked some officers to give folks some rides to the police department, was that kind of the end of your involvement, or did you do anything else there?
That was pretty much the end, yes, ma'am.
Do you recall about how long you were there the whole time?
The whole time before leaving the scene, maybe 30 minutes.
And that includes arriving on the scene and searching the home for Jacob Koski?
Yes, ma'am.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Major Bolton. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing well. My name is Christina Rudy. I'm one of the attorneys representing Mr. Baker.
Okay.
And I just have a few questions for you.
Yes.
So you, at the time in October of 2016, you were post-certified, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you responded that morning based off of Officer Frugoli's request for backup, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And about what time did you arrive at 3300 Highway 18th, approximately?
I don't remember. I want to say that he advised radio probably just before 10 o'clock in the morning that he had spotted the vehicle and was following it. And it wasn't very long after that that numerous officers arrived to assist him, but I couldn't tell you exactly.
Just a matter of minutes, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you arrived, how were you dressed that day? Were you in a uniform like you are now?
I was probably a short sleeve shirt, but something similar, yes, ma'am.
And that uniform had the same badges and everything on it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have your firearm with you that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you carry a pistol or do you carry a rifle?
Normally a pistol. Not to say that I don't have a rifle, but
Sure.
normally I have a pistol.
And when you arrived, there were already people detained at that point, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Then they were on the ground,
Yes, ma'am.
and they already had handcuffs on them, right?
I would say most of them, if not all, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you got there, were there still officers with their guns drawn at that point?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And did you draw your gun when you exited your vehicle, do you recall?
I don't recall if I did or not. I do remember officers having guns out and trained on the house, of course, because we did not know if Koski was inside and watching us from a window or what.
So it's important for officers in a situation like this for you to know where all of the non-law enforcement people in that immediate area are. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yes, ma'am.
You don't want people just wandering around, right?
Sure.
You said about 5 or 6 people entered the home. Were you one of those people?
I was.
And when you entered the home, do you recall whether you had your pistol with you or your rifle with you? Do you recall?
I don't know for sure, but probably my pistol.
Okay. And then once that house was cleared, you
It's hard to say.
handcuffed one of those people, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know whether that person that you unhandcuffed was Mr. Baker or
I
not?
believe it was Mr. Williams.
Okay. and it was your direction for the other people to be unhandcuffed, even if you didn't do it yourself, right?
Yes, ma'am, that's right.
And about how long, I think there's two ways that you can answer this question. Either, do you know about what time the CID officers arrived? Or, if it's easier for you to answer, do you know how long it was between when you got there and when CID arrived?
I would say the individuals there, we probably had them in cuffs for about 15 minutes. The time it took for me to speak to the individual inside with the infant, asking her to come out, getting consent, going in and clearing the house for Koski, determining he wasn't there, unhandcuffing them, probably about 15 minutes that they were in handcuffs, and I would say within 5 minutes after that, detectives started to arrive, if I'm not mistaken.
So, CID arrived not very long before you wound up leaving the scene.
That's
Would that be a fair statement too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You said that you asked officers to give individual rides to the police station to be interviewed, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you the one that had the conversations with the individuals to ask them if they wanted to be interviewed or to ask them to go to the station, or did you just coordinate the rides?
I just coordinated. It would have been the detectives that actually started speaking to the individuals there before we left, and then it would have been at the direction of detectives for me to ask the officers to give them rides.
Okay. Did you ask any of the officers to give any of the individual rides to their home? Or only rides to the police station?
My understanding was that they had all agreed to go to the police department to speak to the detectives. So no, they were just asked to take them to the police department. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you said that after everyone was handcuffed, they were inquisitive. Did anyone leave the scene after they were unhandcuffed?
Not to my knowledge.
During the time that you were there, how many officers would you say were there?
Probably at least 10.
Okay. And did you actually see any of the individuals get into the cars and actually go to the police station? Were you still there for that part?
I'm sure that I was there when they started to get into the cars to go, but I don't specifically remember seeing anybody in particular.
Around that time, were there still 10 or more officers at the scene, or?
Probably, yes.
Okay. And I don't know if I have asked you this, but when you arrived, were you in a marked or unmarked car?
It would have been marked, if I'm
Okay.
not mistaken, unless it was in the shop, which I don't think it was.
Do you recall whether or not you activated your lights and sirens?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you recall whether the car that you were assigned had one of the systems that automatically began recording from a dash cam when the lights and sirens were activated?
It would not have had one. The lieutenants generally don't have cameras in their cars.
Do you recall whether any of the other, were you a supervisor? You were a supervisor.
I was a lieutenant, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you know whether any of the people that you supervised would have had cars that had that type of a dash cam system?
Yes, ma'am. There should have been some. Most officers have car cameras, or at least at the time.
And when there was, or when any of those recordings were activated, how were they preserved? Were they on a disc? Were they uploaded somewhere? How did that happen? Do you remember?
Depending on the system, because we had two at the time that we used, Digital Ally and WatchGuard, if I'm not mistaken, which are now obsolete. We don't use them anymore, but I believe they would upload into the system with a server once it got within a Wi-Fi range, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
We use a different system now,
But back in 2016, it was that the type
Yes,
of
ma'am.
system you described. Did you, in October of 2016, have a body cam system?
no, ma'am.
Do you know whether any of the other officers that were at the scene had a body cam system? Do you recall?
I know that this was prior to the department purchasing like a system-wide body cam system that we have now, but at the time, there were always a handful of officers within the department that, for peace of mind, would have their own body camera, but it wasn't required by the department, so it's possible that another one may have had one, yes, ma'am.
And do you happen to know if any, from your personal knowledge, do you happen to know whether any of the officers that were there on October 27th of 2016, whether any of them had that kind of personal camera system?
Only from reading an officer's report recently, I believe it was Officer Phillips indicated that he had turned one on or something, but I don't know. I'm assuming that it must have been a personally owned one.
Sure. Okay. And let me just see if I have other questions. If I may have just one moment. I just have one additional question for you, Major. At the time that, or when everyone was unhandcuffed, were they still supervised or under some sort of observation by any of the officers on the scene?
There were definitely officers still on the scene. We were kind of talking with them because they were all very, wanting to know, did this really happen? We've been hearing reports of this. Oh my gosh, I think I was there. I mean, just things like that. So they were all very inquisitive and kind of chatting with the officers. And I think we indicated, hey, there's detectives on the way. Do y'all mind talking to them? And, just having kind of a conversation with them. But I don't know that I would say they were under guard or what have you. We were just kind of there waiting for the detectives to arrive and chatting with them.
It would be fair to say that at least one officer had eyes on them for that time.
Sure, while we were talking to them, yes ma'am. I mean, they weren't detained at that point, but yes, we were definitely still on the scene with them, waiting for the detectives.
And at that point, they still wouldn't have been able to go into the home, right?
They wouldn't be able to go where? Into the
home?
I suppose they could have after we cleared it and made sure that Koski wasn't there.
But no one told them they were free to go to the home, did they?
Not that I know of.
I don't believe that I have any other questions for you at this time. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Correct. You're up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Major Bolton, once you cleared the house, the scene was safe, Jacob Koski was not found, they were unhandcuffed. Were they free to mill about and go wherever they wanted?
Yes, ma'am.
Were they free to go in the home if they wanted?
Sure, yes, ma'am.
Were they free to take a walk down the street if they wanted?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there anybody that was detaining them in any way?
No, ma'am, not at that point.
In any way, did you or any of your officers say, no, I need you to sit right here?
No, ma'am.
Did you or any of your officers say, no, you can't leave?
No, ma'am.
Did you or any of your officers tell them that they had to stay there until detectives got there?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So was the conversation, you were saying that they were kind of inquisitive and talking to them and chatting with them, was it a much calmer level at that point?
Oh, absolutely.
Was it a much more relaxed level of interaction?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there anyone there at the scene, meaning the people who had been cuffed, did any of them give any indication that they felt like you were not letting them leave?
No, ma'am. I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn there, but at that point in time, once we determined that Koski was not at the scene, we viewed everybody that was there that had previously been detained as witnesses. They were cooperating and had no problem talking to detectives when they were on the way.
Okay. And did that include Matthew Baker?
Yes, ma'am.
That's all the questions I have, Judge.
Any other?
I just have, you know what, Your Honor, I don't have any questions. Thank you, officer. I appreciate it.
I want to make sure I'm clear about something I
Yes,
was going to ask. Other than the police cars, marked or unmarked, and there was the white Jeep,
Yes, sir.
were there any other privately owned cars in that driveway?
I think there was a pickup truck in the driveway as well.
Would it be fair to say that anyone wanted to drive off with the Jeep would not happen?
No, the Jeep would have been evidence, yes, sir, that would have happened.
That would not have happened. Someone said, I need to go home. Did you go home?
They would have been
They
able
take the Jeep.
to, absolutely, yes, sir.
But if they own the red car or truck, they.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay, so we don't know if anybody actually there had keys to that vehicle.
That's correct.
That's what you know. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, I thought that would be the case, we'll make sure. I don't have any other questions this part. Anybody have a question?
Not for the defense, Your Honor.
All right.
Briefly, Judge, on top, to go along with that, if I may, did anyone try to get into that pickup truck and leave?
No, ma'am.
Was the pickup truck there? Did anybody indicate that that was their pickup truck?
Not that I can recall.
That's all the questions I have, Judge.
Awesome.
Not for
Okay,
the
you can
defense,
step
Your Honor.
down.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'll shake it up.
Okay, now this time, Mr. Naylor, don't talk till I sit back.
All right. Thank you very much. Next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Judge. Your Honor. Casey?
Want to go break?
No, well, I'm just speaking for myself, I don't need a break, I just wanted to ask the court a quick question.
All right.
Now that the court reporter is, seated. I know that we still have some witnesses left, and then there are some things that the defense is also going to put up. I'm just wondering, it's almost 2:30 now, so I just need to make arrangements for my daughter if we're gonna go maybe much later in the day, and I just don't know if you determined how much later that will be.
Well, I thought we'd go 5 o'clock,
Okay,
if that's all right.
okay, no, it is fine. It
I
is-
don't like to go beyond 5. I don't.
Okay, some
I
judges
used to go a
are,
lot later.
oh, okay, all right,
I prefer to be done by 5, whether we're done or not.
yes, sir, that's what I needed to know.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Next witness.
Thank you. All right, at this time, the state calls Sergeant David McCrory.
You'll give me the oath, and then once you've had the oath, you can sit down, take your mask off, and then she'll ask you for selection to put in your name.
You swear or affirm that the testimony you give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, you can have a seat. Go ahead and please state and spell your name for the record.
David McCrory, Lecroy.
How are you employed?
I'm now a sergeant with the Henry County Police Department,
And how long have you been with the Henry County Police Department?
just short of 12 years.
Were you employed by the Henry County Police Department back in October of 2016?
I was.
Okay, and in what capacity at that point did you work for the Henry County Police Department?
I was a detective with the Criminal Investigations Division.
And specifically, were you on duty on October 27th, 2016, around maybe a little after 10 a.m. or somewhere around 10 a.m. that morning?
I was.
Okay. And at any point that morning, did you respond to 3300 Highway 81 East?
I did.
Okay. And what was your purpose of going there?
We had gotten information that Mr. Matthew Baker Ms. Kayla Head, Mr. Brooks Knight, and Mr. Jacob Williams were at the location. We were looking as far as for witnesses in reference to a murder that we were working at that time. We had information that the main suspect we were looking for had possibly left the location with them in a white Jeep in an attempt to trying to locate where the main suspect was and find out exactly what happened that night. We made contact with Mr. Baker and those other people at that address.
Okay. And who was that main suspect that y'all were looking for?
Jacob Koski.
And when you arrived at 3300 Highway 81, had officers already gone in and cleared the house looking for Jacob Koski?
Yes.
Okay. And they had determined he was not there?
That's correct.
Okay. When you arrived at the location, 3300 Highway 81 East, was anyone in handcuffs?
No.
Was anyone being detained?
No.
Was anyone kind of gathered together and told that they had to sit over someplace?
No.
Was anyone told that, to your knowledge, that they couldn't leave?
No.
Okay. Did the folks that, when you arrived there, did they seem interested in talking to police?
Yes.
Okay, specifically Matthew Baker, did he seem interested in talking to police?
He did.
Okay. When you arrived, just to be clear, you said nobody was in handcuffs, but let me ask you specifically, was Matthew Baker in handcuffs any longer?
No.
Had you been made aware that they had been handcuffed earlier when officers were clearing the scene?
Not to my recollection. I believe it was well after, like kind of you can say like a debrief, a situation debrief at the end. Where there was something mentioned as far as the detaining when the initial officers that responded to clear the house did. But at that time, as far as my arrival, speaking with Matthew Baker, I had no knowledge that they were detained in handcuffs.
Okay. Did he tell you at any point that he had been put in handcuffs at that point when you were there at the driveway?
No.
Did you at any point ask, you said that they, in your estimation at that point, they were witnesses to what may have happened over on Moccasin Gap, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. At that point, did you treat them as such, as witnesses?
Yes.
Meaning, did you ask them if they would be willing to talk to you?
I did.
Did you speak to Matthew Baker in his driveway or in that area before you went to the police department?
I did.
Did you speak to his mother?
I did.
Did you speak to his sister?
Briefly, but I did, yes.
Did any of them give any indication that Matthew Baker did not want to talk to you?
No.
Was there any indication that Matthew Baker felt like he was being forced to talk to you?
No.
Did you in any way tell him that he had to talk to you?
No.
Was he in any other way restrained? Meaning, I know you said he wasn't in handcuffs. Was he in any kind of leg irons?
No.
Was he in zip ties?
No.
Was he standing there with an officer holding on to him?
No.
Was he standing there with an officer behind his back?
No.
Did any officers have any weapons drawn?
No.
Did any officers give any orders to him to tell him where he had to go?
No.
Based on your observation of Matthew Baker, by the time you got there and everyone was not handcuffed, was Matthew Baker walking around freely in that driveway and in that front yard?
Yes.
Do you recall whose Jeep that was?
I believe, well, Miss Kayla Head was the one driving it. I don't remember if it was registered to her, but it was her vehicle that she was driving.
What was her condition that day that you observed?
Initially, there was, I guess, like a sense of confusion, but during the process of initially speaking with Mr. Baker in the driveway, she walked by me, obviously at this point, distraught, and made the statement, "Oh my God, I think I drove the car and murdered."
Did she appear to be shaken up?
Yes.
Okay. At that point, did she appear that she was capable of driving, even if she wanted to leave at that point?
No.
Was it your intent to apply for a search warrant of the Jeep?
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your interaction with Matthew Baker there in the driveway. Do you recall, you mentioned a couple of people that you talked to. Did you talk to him or his mother first?
I spoke with Mr. Baker first.
And to be clear, his mother's name is it Angelia Lanier?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was she close by when you spoke to Mr. Baker?
She was.
At the time that you spoke to Mr. Baker, did he appear in any way reluctant to talk to you?
No.
Did he appear afraid of you in any way?
No.
Did he tell you he didn't want to answer your questions?
No.
Did he tell you that he was confused by your questions?
No.
Did his answers to your questions actually coincide with the question that was asked?
Yes.
Did he appear at any point to be under the influence of anything at that time that would have affected his ability to understand you?
No.
Did he seem to understand you as you were speaking to him there in the driveway?
He did.
Did you in any way threaten him that he had to talk to you?
No.
Did you in any way promise him anything to get him to talk to you?
No.
Now let's be clear, did you read him Miranda before you spoke to him?
I did not.
Why is that?
Again, at that time, there were witnesses. We had no information to place any of the subjects in that driveway as far as actual suspects to this crime. The information that we were given that the main person we were looking for, I guess you'd say the main actor at the time of the investigation was Jacob Kosky, and that it was believed that he had left the location with this group of people. So from that end of what we were looking as far as witnesses, not suspects, I had no information to tie them to be any sort of actual involvement in the crime.
And did that change down the road?
It did change down the road.
Okay. But at the time that you were speaking to him in the driveway, Matthew Baker was purely a witness in your eyes?
Yes.
And did you treat him as such?
I did.
At any point did Matthew Baker ask that you stop asking him questions?
He did not.
At any point did he say he didn't want to answer your questions until he had an attorney with him?
He did not.
At any point did he seem to in any way stop answering your questions?
He did not.
Was there anything about Matthew Baker's demeanor when you were talking to him in that driveway that made it seem that he did not want to talk to you?
No, we're not.
And was there anything about your demeanor that would indicate to another person that that person had to talk to you?
Judge, I'm going to object to this line of questioning at this point. And my objection here is that this is an officer who is not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, and he's being asked at this point quite detailed questions about how a person would perceive his behavior. He's being asked questions about the internal subjective mental state of basically everyone who was at that house. And I would ask Judge and object to these questions asking about how someone other than Detective McCrory himself felt or how they perceived what was happening. It would be speculation, Your Honor.
Well, Madam Prosecutor.
Your Honor, the state's position is the defense filed this motion, and we have to show that his statement was given freely and voluntarily and not under any kind of threat, not under any promises. And so I can certainly ask this officer his perception and his behavior. I asked him, did he do anything that to his knowledge would have given anyone the impression that they had to speak to him? And I think that he can certainly answer what his behavior was and what he observed of Mr. Baker. If Mr. Baker never told him he wanted an attorney, never told him he didn't want to talk to him, never gave him any indication that he didn't want to talk to him, never seemed confused by his questions, never hesitated in answering those questions, those are certainly things for the court to consider as to whether or not this statement was freely, voluntarily, and knowingly made. And so I believe that those are legitimate questions that I should be able to ask this detective based on his interaction with Matthew Baker.
Objection overruled.
If I could.
It is subject to cross-examination. He's not rendered an opinion. He's asking about his perception. You can certainly ask him about what gave him that perception. Lack thereof. I don't know what we're getting interference from. Probably me. Close to the microphone. But
And Your Honor, if I could just make sure that for the purposes of the record, I understand the court's ruling. I just want to make sure that for the purposes of the record, I perfect my objection. My objection is not to questions about whether or not this officer made a promise or made a threat. I think those are perfectly legitimate questions. The questions that I am objecting to, that I am arguing call for speculation, are: was Mr. Baker apprehensive about talking to you? Was Mr. Baker afraid to talk to you? Did Mr. Baker want to talk to you? Those are the types of questions that I think call for speculation and veer into subjection and speculation about somebody's mental state. Whereas the other questions about what someone did or specifically what someone said are fair game. But I just wanted to, I understand the court's ruling, but I just wanted to make sure that I, for the purposes of the record, clarified exactly the nature of my objection. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. I still believe it's a relevant point of inquiry. I've heard it many times argued. First off, not just in this case, but in other cases where they don't ask, they don't tell them something. Well, we believe he would not know he was free to go, but you didn't tell him. Well, I know what he believes. And you're getting into the same act. Well, how you act, how you respond to questions. You know, when the questions start veering off on some area that doesn't sound like a witness question, it sounds like a suspect question. Did he change behavior? All of that would be relevant, so that's why I'm making a rule. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. At any point when you were speaking to Mr. Baker in the driveway, did he appear to not understand your questions?
He did not.
At any point, did he tell you, I'm not going to answer that question?
No.
Were his statements to you, and when I say, I'm going to use the term free-flowing, meaning that was it just a back and forth between the two of you, or was there any major hesitation on his part?
It seemed like they even back and forth.
About how long was that interview with him that discussion with him in the driveway?
Maybe 5 to 10 minutes before I told him I was going to speak with his mother.
And during the course of being out there at the house at 3300 Highway 81 East, did you at any point ask Mr. Baker if he would come to the police department to give a more detailed statement?
I did.
Okay. And did he indicate to you whether or not he would?
I thought there were clarifications on how they would get there and how they would get back. Once I clarified that with Miss Lanier, who was the main one asking those questions, there was no hesitancy as far as going to headquarters to get a statement.
Okay. When Mr. Baker was, did an officer give him a ride to the police department?
He did.
Okay. Was he handcuffed when he got in that patrol car?
No.
Okay. Was he in any way other way restrained when he got into that car?
Outside of the normal police doors that don't open from the inside when the back doors are closed.
Okay. And did he in any way say that he didn't want to get in that car and go to the police department?
No.
Did you record that interaction with Mr. Baker in the driveway?
It was already recorded, yes, ma'am.
Ron Maverick?
Sir?
Dr. LaCroix, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize what I'm showing you?
I do. There's a disc with my initials on it that contains the driveway interview with Mr. Baker.
Okay. And have you observed or listened to that before?
I have.
And is it an accurate depiction of the discussion that you had with Mr. Baker in the driveway?
It is.
Your Honor, at this time, State Tender State's Exhibit 1.
And no objections for the purposes of this hearing, Your Honor.
All right, it'll be admitted.
Permission to publish, Your Honor? assuming the equipment works.
Yeah, well,
May I have one
I can't
moment?
help you with that.
Well, I might have to call Skip. Can I have one moment to see if this will work for me? I have one moment, Your Honor.
All right.
I may have to call Mr. Floyd. I thought it was, he told me just plug it in and it'll go, but I plugged it in and it's not going. Let me try again if I may. Your Honor, may I have a moment to call Mr. Floyd? Thank you. You want me to step out or do it from here?
They don't even give you DVD drives anymore when you buy a laptop. You gotta buy an external. That's because nobody uses it anymore.
Your Honor, would you like me to step out or call him from here?
We're gonna go off the record and let you stay right where you are.
Thank you, Judge. Hello. Hello. The audio is not working. Would you be able to come up to courtroom view, please?
Since we're off the record, if anybody wants to use the restroom.
Thank you.
it's time to do that.
Yes, please.
Hang in there, I hope we get to that point at some point. We're looking at maybe another 13, 15 years right now.
It's right.
Oh, yeah.
If he doesn't get working with that, stick it in mind, and alternative speakers, it should play. Because I don't generally take down audios anyway, I just put parenthetical audio play.
Got you.
So it's up to you.
Okay, well, he said he's coming up, so we'll
Okay.
see what he says.
All
Thank
right,
you.
I'm gonna stand back here.
I appreciate it.
Pretty much what they're going to do.
Oh, yeah.
They gave me the floor. But first they fired the officer, but let me in the street. And the other folks didn't know anything about the camera, so I had to dash my way in with work. Just took time, and then I ran to the judge for advice. That's just sort of the courtroom, sort of more. He said, take the elevator, come right off the back hall. So I got off the back hall, every door was locked. I had no key, I had no card. Even the one that had little glass windows, nobody was up there. I couldn't see anybody to wave at them. So finally I had to call the lady that got me a job up there. She said, I'll call somebody. All of a sudden I hear somebody's phone ring. So I go to that door and I hear a conversation about me and I'm on the other side of the door. I said, well, good, there's help coming. But they're all this trouble. And the other side, the case didn't show up.
Yeah, that
Not
makes
a bad
sense.
thing, except,
That makes sense.
wasn't a surprise, really.
I can only imagine the Fulton courthouse being that way. The numerous times on the Fulton County jail, people were trying to figure out why they were in the jailer. Go down the hallway, take a right, and down the hallway, and the right is a solid concrete wall, there's nothing, and they come back around, y'all work here, I can't walk through walls, is this something y'all got?
If there's secret passage.
Yeah, but I don't, that's a concrete wall, I can't go through there. Are you sure? Yeah, yeah.
They couldn't find it. I said, well, you know, I know it's here. They called me somewhere. They called me somewhere in the building. It would take sometimes 5 or 6 hours to be processed. And so they don't know where they're stashed. Then they called me. They get me. Didn't know where they were. So you find out where you are, I'll come get you. And so you can't. I called the cabin. They're not even the full gas on Decatur Street. The old get on Decatur Street. So, I got to Butch County, Mark County, Coweta. I go as far as Detroit. Something. I got another case over there. They claim. Murder case up there. Hilarious about murder. Except, that's what happened. All especially girl. I mean, you've been in Clayton County Jail for the last 6 months for any reason. Everybody reason. Everybody.
Yeah, problem.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Wow, that was in the Cat County? Like,
There comes Mr. Jim.
hello.
Or if you
This
put,
came
my
here,
brother and I
it's
both,
here when I
we
hit
take
the
after our
things, but it's
grandfather,
not, no sound is coming.
retired
And so I plugged the
years,
thing in the
and
back,
they never stopped.
because I thought it was supposed to, and now
Never
it's
stopped doing
not.
anything. He's 90-some-odd years old.
And I don't know this.
On the roof of his house with a broom and sweeping leaves
Take
off
the
my sister
thing
that
and put it up
street.
to
She's
the
called, you got to be kidding me.
Either speakers.
Get your old behind off that roof before I gotta come out here because you fall. And the Lord knows what's happening. I'll be fine. I'm doing this. Hard-headed old joke.
Oh, there's a computer there? Oh. So what do I do? So this disc is just audio, but I do have a disc that's video as well, that I need to project up there, so. Okay. I just need for the judge to be able to hear everything playing and see, you know, this is like I said, it's just audio. You wanna sit here?
We're all helping.
The projector to be on.
Can we go turn on?
We're sitting there halfway through our first room, and Renee and I got 2 rooms living down there. How in the world?
It says it's on.
When we
It's on
got
standby?
rovers and
Okay,
brushes,
just
he's
hit
in
the
there
carbon
one
one
brush. He just pushes everything in the other room,
Yeah,
with a
it's
cover
okay,
on
it says status.
and knocked everything out.
Right. It should be warming up.
Okay.
Watching them cut in, not putting tape where it's just cutting in, not leaving a single piece of spray paint anywhere. So you gotta be kidding me.
I think this might do it,
Be kidding me.
because it's showing the copy what's on there.
Okay.
So let me do something that might
Yeah,
test it.
especially for law enforcement, a lot of them, when they retire that recliner, and then that's normally where they end up getting found up on that.
And then coming from,
I feel like it's coming from there.
Hopefully we can get
in
to that.
that case, we might,
Play and see if it.
It's just gonna get to that.
you want to play that or you want to play something
I
else?
don't know if I'll put it back there or not.
You want to play something else? Or-
Yeah, you can play it. They're gonna hear it anyway. That's fine.
We talk about the guy's old, but like my lieutenant's got about probably maybe 9 years before he goes.
Doesn't seem like it's
And
that
so he
loud.
just is because he's
I can
got some
hear
stuff
something
and it's
very
all
loud.
that.
It is from there,
13 or
then there's an
14
audio
years left.
speaker on
That's
that
a
one.
long time. That's a long time. We've already been doing this. Feels like a long
I
time.
hear it very faintly coming from there.
Oh, excuse me.
Well, that's just something like that. I plug this into my laptop?
Plug it directly into the laptop and just take it.
You need my hand? Just plug it in here.
Let's just do
Oh, sorry.
Does Nathan still involved, at the Tony Brewing Company? Probably doing pretty well for him.
I'm out here, actually with the owner of the gym, Matthew Baker, his mother, his sister, and another female. He is here. No. Just, if you heard, supposedly he's called dispatch, don't have to hear himself, and to go try to coordinate with him.
It's been a long time since I've seen Nathan. Probably since we
That's
were
what they're,
there. I was still seeing the investigating the state for a house that was vacant, got torn up, and I didn't think anything about it. I called the victim, I was on the phone with him, and I was like, boy, sounds familiar. About the same time, I was like, Nathan? Hey. Yeah. Oh. And whoever real estate he was working with, they were the ones that owned the house, and he was the one that tore it up. Ran into him a couple times, and he told me everything that he had going on, and of course, when Dow was working with us, Dow would give the heads up on what Nathan had going on, and tell him that he was going to be really good. Yeah. Well, hey, what he knows what to do with us. Yeah, they did.
And the reason I'm recording this is I don't want to put words in your mouth. Alright, first off, what's your name? Alright, look, man.
Okay. Pop it in and get it to pull up and it'll show up there. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Permission to publish and actually publishing are two different things.
Yes. Permission to actually publish, Judge?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Detective McCrory, before we hit play, you obviously had been, had you been having small talk with Matthew Baker before you started recording, and then you started asking him questions?
Yes.
I know. Here's my question. The reason I'm recording this is I don't want to put words in your mouth. Here's the rest in front of me. Alright, first off, what's your name?
Matthew Baker.
Okay. When's the last time you saw Jacob?
Yesterday.
Okay, where was it at?
I do not know. I know where. I don't know where it is because we were in Locust Grove, and it was like a party that we got invited to by a sister.
Okay.
She was watching, and she told us to leave. So we left, and me and Jacob came back here.
Okay. How many other people were at the party?
Can't remember the name.
Do you remember what the area looks like?
I know it was like, I'm not trying to be like,
No, just like
it was like a country place.
Okay. Was there did they have like a horse on the property?
I don't think so.
Do they have like a bonfire out in the field?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's what we went for. It was the bonfire we went for.
Okay.
And then we told them to leave.
What was it happened? Y'all got told to leave.
They just came outside and said they had to leave.
Who is they? Besides Jude?
Just Jude. She's the only one that came outside and said that.
You remember how many females were over there?
I didn't see anybody. When we pulled up, it was like a matter of time we had to leave.
Okay. Well, here's the thing, man.
Like, he told us it was a shooting. Like, what
other kind of shootings are there, bro?
I mean, like, my sister was in the shooting. Like, she got murdered.
I hear you. It's not completely, regardless, shootings are never good. This was not good. And here's the thing.
Came to my house yesterday.
Okay.
We played basketball and we went to a photo shoot. And then after that, we got invited by Jude to the bonfire, and we left. Came here. And that's when me and Phil and Jacob.
How did he end up, or why did,
We were playing basketball with him.
I was saying, why did he end up getting dropped off all the way out about the 212? Because somebody said me, whoever it is, said they dropped him off out towards Newton County early this morning.
I do not know. I was here, sir.
You were here at your house?
Yes, sir.
Who all stays here with you?
My mom, my sister, and my brother that was in jail.
James is in jail?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I,
Is that your mother
yes, sir.
in the gray shirt?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long has James been in jail?
Yesterday.
What did you lock up for?
Disorder of conduct. That's it.
Where were y'all coming from before all of this happened?
Pulled out driveway, turned around, came back to get my wallet. And that's when I just seen nothing but.
What time did you get scared? What time did you get back to the house?
Couldn't tell you.
And you,
I don't have a phone, so.
I got you.
And my watch really doesn't work. I just wear it for class.
Okay. Anybody else that's here at the house that can verify that you've been here all night?
My sister.
Which one's your sister? The one that's getting the baby? So I've got people.
My mom was here when I was here too, though.
Okay. I had a couple people tell me that Jacob had a second guy with him. They're telling me that no one
I'm coming back and visit. I'm out here. I'm out here speaking with the owner of the Jeep, Matthew Baker, his mother, his sister, and another female. He is here. Huh? No. Just if you heard, supposedly he's called dispatch talking about he'll turn himself in, and they're trying to coordinate something. They're working. Supposedly that's what he's called in. That's what they're working on. But I'm trying to verify some stuff here. All right. Okay. All right. See what, Matthew, let me talk to her real quick. And I'll come back and finish up and get whatever information I need from you. You can go back up there.
Detective McCrory, when you were talking to Mr. Baker, you got a phone call at the end there.
Yes.
And who were you talking about when you were saying he's called dispatch and he'll turn himself in?
That was Jacob Costa. While we were on scene gathering this information, dispatch had advised over the radio that they were receiving a phone call from someone claiming to be Mr. Koski, giving a location claiming that they would turn themselves in. So obviously, when the middle of what I was in the middle of, couldn't go from there, and they were trying to verify if this person was actually him and get him in custody if that was the case.
Okay. And at the end there, when you said, okay, Matthew, let me talk to her real quick. Who is the her that you were referring to?
His mother, Miss Lanier.
And was his mother close by as you were talking to him?
She was.
And when you said that you would get more information from him, we couldn't hear him give any response. Did he non-verbally respond to you in any way?
He did. That was kind of like the head nod. That's when he asked, can I go back up this way towards the top of the driveway? So you can say, yeah, you can go back up there.
And is that where he had come from?
I believe so, yes.
And did he walk down to you wherever you were that you were speaking to him?
He had walked down, coming down the driveway as I was coming up. Whether it was to meet me or if he was just walking, I'm not sure. But he was walking down the driveway as I was coming up.
So when you got there, was he walking down the driveway escorted by a police officer?
No.
Was there any officer near him or around him that seemed to be monitoring him?
No.
Was there any officer that seemed to have any kind of physical control over him?
No.
Was there any officer close by that could have exerted physical control on him?
No.
Was there any officer that had any weapons pointed at him?
No.
So he was just kind of, at that point, milling around, walking around freely.
Yes.
And when he said, I'm going to go back up there, and you said, yeah, you can go back up there, was there any problem with him doing that?
No.
Was he free to leave if he wanted to leave?
Yes.
Did you give him any indication that he could not leave?
No.
Now, in the small talk before you started recording your interview with him, did you give him any indication that he had to talk to you then and that you were going to start recording?
No.
When you spoke to his mother, where was that?
In the driveway, if I remember correctly, it's towards the top part of their driveway. There was a section to the right that runs kind of like a sidewalk to the front porch. It was like kind of in that area.
At any point during your discussion with his mother, did Matthew Baker come up to and participate in your discussion with his mother?
He did. He kind of stayed off to the side, kind of peripheral line, standing right there beside her, but was there within earshot and heard us talking. He would interject things that he knew were correct wherever his mother was saying.
At any point, did you summon him to that part and tell him he had to come up there and talk to you?
No.
At any point, did any other officer summon him and tell him he had to come up there?
No.
At any point, did it appear that did he give any indication that he did not want to talk to you there?
No.
And in fact, when you were talking to his mom, did he interject himself into your conversation with his mother?
He did.
All right.
Yeah, I would have an objection.
All right, may I approach?
Certainly may.
Thank you. Sergeant LaCroix, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 2. You recognize what I'm showing you there in State's Exhibit 2.
I do. That is a CD marked with my initials. That is the audio recording of the interview with Ms. Lanier in the driveway of the residence.
Okay, and is this the interview where Matthew Baker voluntarily interjected himself into your conversation with Ms. Lanier on several occasions?
It is.
All right, this time State Tender State's Exhibit 2.
Your Honor, at this point, I am going to object to this. This is not relevant. This is a conversation between Detective McCrory and Ms. Lanier, who is not able to give consent for Mr. Baker to make any statements. Just what she says, what plans she made, are irrelevant to whether or not a person in Mr. Baker's situation would be free to go or feel that they were free to go. So I would object on relevance grounds at this point, Your Honor.
My question is, you're not seeking then to suppress anything that's recorded that your client said unrelated to any question. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Or you wanted this suppressed, but you don't want this played?
one, I haven't objected to it at this hearing.
Well, your motion is to suppress any statement your client made.
Absolutely, Judge.
And that would include a spontaneous utterance, would it not?
But Judge, correct, Judge, but what I will say is in my motion, I said that there were two statements that we able to, because we can't read the state's mind, we don't know what the state intends to introduce, but from reading the discovery, I can deduce that there were two statements that the state would want to introduce. One is the driveway statement that we just heard, and one is the police station interview. And in our motion, we say these are the two statements, the only two statements that we believe that the state is going to introduce. And if the state wishes to introduce any statements other than these two, then they need to let us know. That was it. And the state, in their response, or up to this very moment, has never indicated that they wish to introduce anything other than that driveway statement and the police statement. So anything that Mr. Baker says here, yeah, we're objecting to it, but we're not. We would object to it being introduced at trial, but up until this point, my understanding is the state had no intent to introduce anything that Mr. Baker said other than those two statements into evidence at trial.
Judge, their motion, which was filed on, I believe it was back in October of 2020, their motion states on page 3 that the statements allegedly made by Mr. Baker were made during custodial interrogations without the benefit of Miranda warnings and should be suppressed. They characterized them into two separate parts. The first statement was made in the driveway of 3300 Highway 81 East in McDonough, Georgia. Guess where we are in this recording? We're still in the driveway of 3300 Highway 81 East. And so when the defense says that they can't read our mind, my mind, as to what I'm going to play, it's their motion. They are trying to suppress anything that he said in the driveway. These are some of the things that he said in the driveway. Further, they're talking about that this is custodial interrogation. It's very relevant for the court to hear. He's milling about and he's popping into conversations that he's not even a part of. So I think that is very relevant to talk about whether or not he was in custody, whether or not he should have been Mirandized, whether or not he was in any way detained, not free to leave, forced to do anything. He's popping in and inserting himself in a conversation that he's not initially a part of. So I think that's very relevant for the court. And their own motion said 3300 Highway 81 East. We're still at that location. These are still statements that he made at that location.
Well, two issues, I suppose, what we're looking at is notice that there was going to be, this is I can see how it all can be considered one statement. It's on two different recordings, but it's not. If I'm not misunderstanding. You have one recording device, is that correct, Austin?
Yes, sir.
And that same device was used to record a direct conversation with Mr. Baker and a conversation with his mother in which he interjected comments.
Correct.
And all of that took place at 3300 Highway 81 East Macon.
Yes, sir.
Technically, I don't know whether you're standing in the driveway or joining the driveway. It's all outside the home. Whether it gets admitted at trial or not may be dependent on this hearing. It may not. I don't know. But notice, you're on notice now that they're going to see you put it in. Okay, and this is not going to prejudice you to continue forward. But at the end of the day, or at the end of this motion here, whenever it occurs, today or tomorrow, if you need more time to produce other witnesses to say, oh no, I was standing right there and he didn't say any of that stuff, that's fine. You'll get plenty of time to do that. But there's no need to slow this process down with an objection to a statement made within minutes of the same recorded statement that you thought you had to deal with. Is this the first notice you received of this recording?
Judge, this is exactly what I'm going to read to you from my motion. I state that there is the first statement singular at 3300 Highway 81 East of McDonough, Georgia. Then it is referred to as the driveway interrogation, again, singular. And then I write, and I quote, Mr. Baker is not aware of any other custodial statements that the state would wish to introduce at trial. If any other statements exist, Mr. Baker also intends to challenge the admissibility of those statements and hereby requests that the state give notice of any such statements. So to characterize Mr. Baker interjecting into a conversation that in the state's own words that he wasn't even involved in, for them to characterize that as the same statement or a statement by Mr. Baker is entirely disingenuous. We object to it being introduced here. And Judge, we would, if the state wishes to introduce it to trial, we would object to that too. It would be under the same grounds.
Your motion can't not cover it because you didn't know anything about it, but when they do try to get in, we're going to object to it. We might as well cover that issue now. It's either a non-custodial statement or a custodial statement. It may still be a non-custodial statement. In fact, if he's interjecting without even being questioned, spontaneous utterance without a question is not suppressible necessarily, unless circumstances were set up to entice the person to make that spontaneous utterance without a question. I don't believe that's what I'm hearing, that he was standing nearby. So it may not be suppressible anyway, regardless of whether you count it as part of the first statement or not. There's no need to ignore the issue until trial. It needs to be addressed now. I would assume they want everything that Mr. Baker said to come in, whether it's part of a statement, whether it's part of somebody heard him say something out on the road or up by the driveway or, on the sidewalk. I don't know if they've got other things that he may have said not to an officer that they're going to put into witness and say, yeah, I heard him say this. Well, that's not a statement that he made in custody that we're aware of. I'm not even sure anymore exists. But you can't object to it and say it's an incustodial statement, and he wasn't given his Miranda rights as a spontaneous utterance. Which is, you're saying that's what in fact it was, that he was there, and his voice appeared, which you haven't even heard it yet, I haven't. His voice appeared on there, he wasn't even part of this conversation. It's then not something that's suppressible by a motion to suppress and being in custody because they didn't ask him a question.
Well, Judge, I think that this, you're correct, that this having it both ways, and that comes from the state. Because the state is saying here simultaneously that this is all one statement at 3300 Highway 81, which is why they didn't give me notice of it or bring it up despite it being mentioned in the motion. But then they're also saying, hey, look, this is spontaneous statements in a conversation that he wasn't even involved in. That comes from the state. If the state wishes to consider this part of the same interrogation, then I'm prepared to move forward with that. And I agree with you, Your Honor, we need to deal with that today. But what I'm saying here is either this is something that's part of that statement, the state's position is either this is something that's part of the statement and it's all part and parcel and we deal with it, or this is him interjecting into something he had nothing to do with and it's spontaneous statements and we just have no clue from the state what they're doing here or what their theory is here, because if this is not a statement that Mr. Baker is involved in, then it has no relevance.
I disagree. It's relevant since he was participating in the statement, obviously able to move about from what I have heard the testimony, and it would go to assuming it was a statement, it would go to his freedom to move about and not being restrained. S2 will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish?
If you can.
I'm going to give it a whirl. Thank you, Judge. And Judge, to move things along, this interview that he conducts and where he's speaking to Ms. Lanier, it does get a little lengthy, but the portion of it, we can do it whichever way you prefer, but the defendant in this case doesn't really start talking in this case until after the 17-minute mark. And so I'm not trying to get in what Ms. Lanier said, I just need to get in the context of Mr. Baker then coming in and putting himself in the conversation. So I'll do whatever the court wants, whatever defense wants. If you want me to play the whole thing, I can play the whole thing. But otherwise, I was just going to start at that general point.
Well, that's good for not waiving your objection. Let me go ahead and state that for you.
Yeah, Judge, our position would be that, based off of what the court has said and what the state has said, what's key here is the context, right? And in order for the court to understand the context, our position is that the entire statement needs to be played.
Play the whole thing.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
For 17 minutes, it's like you get paid for 1 minute.
That's fine, Judge. I see. I'm good with that. I may have one moment.
All right.
Mom, can I speak to you real quick? Oh, Lord have mercy.
Sorry, Judge, I didn't realize that the volume wasn't all the way up.
Mom.
I ain't worried about that.
Mom, can I speak to you real quick?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Whole lot of stuff going on, ain't it?
Too much.
Yeah. I'm Detective McCrory. We're trying to find out some information. I know you've already, of course, you've already heard the name. David Cossey's the main one we're looking to try to find. What I'm
Officer said they just found him.
Yeah, that's what they told me not long after I got done talking with Matt. So we got that taken care of. My question is, when's the last time you seen Jacob over here?
I don't know, but I know that I don't know how true it is. So I don't know about he say, she say, but Austin Trent used to be an associate or friend or whatever of my son. That boy Jacob we're talking about is Austin's sister's brother-in-law.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, so I think Jordan is her husband.
Jacob's brother.
Yeah. And they're separated there. Chelsea and Jordan they're not together.
Okay.
And Chelsea lives with her parents.
Okay.
And I think Austin went back home because his mom told me the other day to tell me that he went home. So,
I've got him. I got him right kind of on the ground. We go where even. Feminine hygiene product. Hey, give us just a second. Where's it at?
It's right there in the desk, like in the room. What do you think? You just hear the boxes.
they're not going to touch it. You want me to grab it?
That's no regular.
They're not going to touch it and stuff.
I'll pop it open. I'll pop it open and you can grab it. Is that locked too?
It doesn't.
It doesn't lock?
It doesn't lock.
Grab what you need. I know about it. Tell me about it and stuff.
I know everything's fine if you don't.
I appreciate it. Believe me, I appreciate it. Alright. Hang tight. Alright. There. Okay.
Anyways, Austin's mom called me the other day and she told me about Jacob.
Right.
She said that Jacob is bad news. He just got out of prison. She said that she saw a picture of him here hanging out with my son.
Right.
And I said, what? I was like, okay, I don't know anything about that. I was at work. And then she said, well, whatever you do, she's like, just tell Matthew to not hang around him because he's bad news. And I said, okay then. Well, when I came home from work yesterday, he wasn't here.
He is in Matthew?
Yeah, Matthew wasn't here right when I got here.
About what time was that?
That was at like 7 something.
7 last night?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I called him and I was like, didn't I tell you to be home when I got home? Because I was gonna scold him and his brother. And she was like, I'm going on my way, I'm coming. We just played basketball, blah, blah, blah. I said, I don't give a fuck what you doing. I said, I'll be here. Well, then a few minutes later, I got a phone call by my older son. He was walking in somebody's woods and they called the police on him. And he went to jail in Bucks County.
That's the disorderly conduct thing?
Yes. I was like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So, how did you know about that?
Matt told me he got locked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matt told me he got locked up.
So, now, I guess he was here yesterday because they were playing basketball. From what I gathered, the little piece of the conversation, I don't even know, but she said they went to play, she said they were playing basketball and they were trying to get my other son to go with them when they were leaving, and he said no, he didn't want to leave. So he ended up leaving and going somewhere else because he said he didn't want to go with them where they were going. And I was like, okay, whatever. So, everything happens for a reason, and I thank God that he wasn't here because he has a panic disorder.
Who, man?
JD, my other son.
Oh, your other son, JD.
And if he would have been here when y'all doing all this stuff, y'all would have shot him. Because
We've dealt with people that have those issues before. As far as the county goes, we do fairly well as far as dealing with them and not.
Yeah, he's outright. He would have been like, we're gonna freak out. You know, he has a real bad panic disorder. But okay, so as far as that, I've never seen this boy. I don't know what this boy looks like. I don't know of him being here. Only thing I know is from what she told me. Now, she just said that he called, or one of them said he called, and no. My daughter said that he came over here with Austin, and Austin asked could he come in the house, and she told him no.
When was this?
Did she say yesterday? Yeah, I don't know.
Your daughter said this, or?
My daughter
Okay.
did.
Detective McCrory, I stand corrected. Is that Matthew Baker that was just speaking?
You play back again, I caught very faint of it up there on this end.
I didn't catch that before.
What she told me. Now, she just said that he called, or one of them said he called, and no. My daughter said that he came over here with Austin, and Austin asked could he come in the house, and she told him no.
When was this?
Did she say yesterday? Yeah, I don't know.
Your daughter said this?
Did you hear it that time?
I didn't hear it that time.
Okay. And was that Matthew Baker there?
That was.
Okay, so that was his mom asking him a question?
Yes.
And at this point, had he come over to you, or was he far away from y'all?
He was in the, when I say general vicinity, like he was within earshot, like on the periphery.
My daughter
Okay.
said that he came the other day, whenever that was, with Austin, and he wasn't here. And Austin asked if he come in the house, and she told him no, because there wasn't nobody there. Well, I mean, the thing with her,
She's inside.
she said right twice. One time when she was 8 by her stepbrother on her daddy, and then once last year. Earlier this year, by 2 people that were associates of his friend. And so that's why earlier when I was going on, I was trying to tell him I need to get to her because she still has problems with that. And those were like her here in his house. There was 2 of them. And they were either aggressively raping her. And that's how we got the baby.
Let me ask you this. With, you called James and said, Maddox said, supposed to be home when I got home. He said, I'm coming back as late as how much time I'm gonna get home.
Oh, it was not long after that. It was.
Did he go anywhere after that?
No, he came in, and then he said, I'll be back in a minute. He left, he went to the store, whatever, and then I said, where are you gonna be at? And he said, I'm just going right up to him. I'm like, okay.
You know about the time that was?
Probably like 8 or 8:30. And then he came right back. I called him and told him, I said, I'm about to get ready to leave. I said, so come back. Well, he came right back, and you see him in jail, that was here for a little bit.
Okay.
And then he was fussing. Well, not really fussing, but he was like, hey, Mama, you told me to hurry up and come back. And we ain't ready to go because I had to take my car and drop it off in Griffin. And my husband is separated. But, it's not on bad terms or whatever. It's just all of our kids can't get along. And so, he told me I could keep his truck so I can take him to the doctor today and I could way back and forth to work or whatever. So, I stayed down there last night because he had to take his son to school. Well, when I left last night, it was like, I don't know, it was like 12:30 to 1 o'clock. And they was here. Well, him and Jacob was here. And then I left, and when I got down to Racetrack Road, I turned around and came back because I had house shoes on. They hurt my feet, so I changed my house shoes, put these shoes on, and got my phone charged. That was like, I wasn't that far, like maybe 1:15. And I stayed here for a few minutes after that because I was joking around with him. And then when I came back up,
left the first time you came back, you seen your house you was at. Matt was here.
Yeah,
and
he was here for.
It was just Matt or Matt? So Matt and
him
Jacob.
and Jacob was here.
So you went and handled business that you were gonna handle. Came back, and when you came back then.
Well, no, I did, when I stayed here, when they was here, we was here for hours.
Okay.
Several hours. I had to take a shower.
No, I'm talking about like the what we're talking about when you went.
When I went to.
Yeah, right. You came back from your house. You
Yeah.
on Matt and Jacob were here. Joked with them.
Yeah.
Left and went and did whatever
And then I
else.
left and went and I stayed in Griffin last night.
Okay.
And then I told him, I said, I told him, I said, stay here. I said, don't leave. I said, don't leave. I said,
Just for doing that, you maybe paranoid more than that.
yeah, I said, to make sure that make sure the door is locked or whatever. And I said, and they need to go home.
Okay.
Because when I came back, they was in the driveway.
Gotcha.
And so,
Sergeant LaCroix, when she was referencing they need to go home, was she indicating to you who she meant?
It was the other three that were there in the driveway.
Alright, I'm not dumb.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's really the reason why I didn't turn around and come back, just because he was cleaning his room. Cleaning your room for what? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So, I came back and I said, I walked in the house and said, what are y'all doing here? I mean, and they,
About what time was that?
it was like 1:15, 1:30.
Oh, so they were here when you came back then?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because that's what I'm saying. I didn't even get so they had to be sitting at the TV station. Probably when I was doing. And so when I came back in the house, and I was like, what are y'all doing here? And she was like, we're just here to pick up Jacob. And I was like, all right. I said, y'all better not fucking stay here. I said, if I come home in the morning, I started finding out here, so I'll beat y'all fast. So it was like, oh, no, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. All right, I don't really know her. But this one here, she's a good girl. That one there, I can't speak about her.
Yeah.
She seems like she's okay or whatever. It's like this one here definitely is a good girl.
Mom, I'm thinking about it. Let me get your actual name.
Angela is AMGELIA.
I'm right top of the paper clip. I wonder why I'm so that did that. AMGELIA.
Linear. LANIE.
Okay, that's right.
11278.
278. What's the phone number for you?
678 914 9905.
What's Matt's name?
We don't have one.
How did you get in touch with him earlier
Off
today?
their phones.
Off these two girls'
Yes.
phones?
Yeah. I called because or Jacob's phone. They all have a phone. One of them, we don't have a phone. Because I told him, I'm not paying for him a phone. He's 19. He quit school.
Do you know anything now?
Yeah, I mean, and he's trying to get himself together or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And school's not for everybody. You know, I understand that, but so I just told him, you just turned 19. I said, you want a phone? One reason why I cut the phone off because every time I called, it was always there.
Yeah.
So if I can't.
Burn the time up, burn
If I can't get in contact with you, then I'm not. Then he said he didn't want a phone. When he wasn't doing good, he said he didn't want a phone.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but when I came back, they was in the room. He had his pajamas on. He had his pajamas on and everything. And then I told him to leave. And they said, okay, we're gonna be leaving. Well, I know they didn't.
Yeah.
I know they didn't. Because
He's on an ass.
okay, my daughter texted me this morning and said, Mom, I hope you knew this for the night. And so,
No. I've got her cell phone in my pocket. Just let her know where that's at. Yes, they need to be, they can't let them drive over there just because she's so freaked out, I wouldn't want her driving anyhow.
and then I deleted that text on my phone.
That's fine.
I wish I wouldn't have.
That's
But I just did it because I didn't want it. I'm trying to keep peace. I ain't want to hear her argument, and I was just gonna talk to my on my own.
No sense about arguing about it.
Exactly. And I just was gonna say, I did it, but they stayed here. The girls stayed here last night. And when I got here this morning, I got here probably about, I think I probably only been here like 20 minutes before y'all all swarmed around. And they were just getting ready to leave. But when I pulled up, they were coming out the house. And I said, y'all be here all night? No, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. I said, don't fucking lie to me.
it's really fucked with. Because I'm be gone all day long, and I don't want to leave him in the house all day long. And about that time, I guess he saw all this out here, and he was like, Mama, 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 Mama. And I was like, what? And then he was like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. And then I come out.
Yeah, if Detective Ross or you, either one, can snap some quick pictures of it so we can get that, that'll be fine.
And then I came out, and all I see was cars everywhere, two guys walking, and had their guns out, and I'm coming down saying, what's going on? I think y'all are at the wrong house. And then he was like, somebody here. I was like, who the fuck is that? And then he pulled the gun out and he was talking about,
You can imagine it's been a very, very stressful morning for us with everything we've had going on.
I understand.
I'm sure if y'all see, if you may not completely see it yet, but once you see the news coverage, you'll find out why it's a little bit, we're a little bit high strung with it.
I'm gonna tell you, out of all this commotion here, one thing I'm really pissed about. Two things I'm pissed about. No, three things I'm pissed about.
The more you think about it, the more you think about it, it's gonna keep on adding on.
I know. I mean, other than this boy, who the fuck this boy is, but the three things are this situation here that I'm really pissed about is one, the one fat guy called me a bitch.
Who did?
The one fat cop that was up here, his last name starts with a B, that's all I know.
One's fat.
Yeah, he called me a bitch because I was sitting on the ground with handcuffs on. Before I had handcuffs on. I was sitting on the ground. They told me to get on the ground. I got on the ground. And then he was like, who's in the house? I said, nobody's in the house but my daughter and my granddaughter. And then he was like, bitch, don't be fucking playing with me.
Grand officer next to me.
He was here, Delici or something.
I'll figure out who that is and
And he was standing right there and he put my handcuffs on because I asked him, I said, can I get an apology?
you take a picture and keep my face
I
out.
know. Can I get an apology from you? And he was like, looking at me like, what the fuck for? And he said, an apology. I said, yeah, because you called me a bitch. And he was like, well, after the morning I've had, I'm all out of apologies.
The officer that you saw sitting here, the kind of middle-aged officer that had the ball cap on,
He's very nice.
that's his lieutenant. I'll pass that word on to him to let him look at it and deal with what he needs to deal with from there.
And the little young guy looked like he just came fresh out of fucking school. He was rude too because I'm trying to explain to him. I told him, understand what the fuck y'all were doing. I know y'all safety and our safety and figure out you got three things to multitask. I know that. I'm telling y'all what the fuck your job is. Can you please just go in the house and get my daughter? Can you walk in with me and get my daughter and my granddaughter? You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't want them going in with guns and shooting them up. And her come around the corner and already be, crazy stuff.
All it is, so you have no concern. All this is because, number one, he's friends with Jacob. Apparently.
No, he's not friends with Jacob.
Or Costa, he knows Costa. He knows Costa.
Who is that said, yeah, I know him?
That was Mr. Baker.
And the other girls, and then Ms. Jacob talking about they saw him earlier this evening. All we're doing is a formal interview so we can get our questions that we need answered, and then we will make sure that we will get them back home where they need to be.
Okay, so y'all will get them back home. Okay, because the baby missed a point. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm not being serious about it, but I am. I know, but my daughter has an infection. That's why she has that back. She has to be at her home today because her infection is still not well.
We will make sure that everybody gets back to their places where they reside, safely with no issues.
Okay, so
everybody's going to the same place.
okay, it's not going to get dropped back off.
Well, I mean, that's up to them. If they wouldn't get dropped off here, then.
Who is that you're talking to there that is asking about getting dropped back off?
That's Mr. Baker.
Alright, so this is what I'm going to say, okay? Jacob is here, and Brooke and Taylor are coming.
And who said, yeah, that's it?
I let Mr. Baker know.
That's it, and that's only until I come back, and then I'll take them home. Hopefully, they're in here.
We're gonna have the car on the first one because they're telling us the Koski was in the car. We gotta see what he was in it.
Who is that you're talking to? Is that Matthew Baker that asked about the car?
There was, Mr. Baker was standing there, and I believe Miss Head was nearby as well.
Are they gonna get their phones back? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Who's that? Yeah.
So that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar. I don't tell you back here, man. Alright, let's go ahead and let's go. The quicker we can get Matthew in there, the quicker we can done so we can get them on.
Y'all come straight back here, don't leave up. When y'all get back, y'all can come here.
So, Sergeant McCrory, did everybody then get rides to go down to the police department for interviews?
Yes, then Mr. Baker, Miss Head, Miss Knight, and Mr. Williams were all given rise to the Entertainment Police Department headquarters for the formal interviews.
Okay. And at that point, when you were talking to Miss Lanier, as you were talking to his mother, did Mr. Baker in any way protest or say that he'd changed his mind, that he didn't want to go and give an interview?
No.
So he gave you consent to interview.
He did?
Did he ever withdraw that consent and tell you that he didn't want to talk to you?
No, he did not.
Was it your intent, you told his mother during the interview, and you told Mr. Baker during the interview, that your intent was to give them all rides back to that location, 3300 Highway 81 East? Was that your intention?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Once you got to the police department and got statements from folks, did that change?
It did.
Okay. When you got to the police department, I know in that previous recording that we heard, there was some indication that Jacob Koski was planning on turning himself in. Did Mr. Koski turn himself in?
He did.
Did you interview him at the police department?
Myself and at the time, gang agent Gleason interviewed Mr. Koski at headquarters, yes.
And based on your interview with Jacob Koski, did you find out who it was that he, Mr. Koski, was saying was in the house with him? Well, let me ask you this. Did Jacob Koski indicate that he had committed these crimes?
He did.
Okay. Did he say who was in the house with him when he was doing this? When this was all happening?
He did.
Okay. And who did he say was with him?
Matthew Baker.
Okay. At that point, did you then go interview Matthew Baker?
After the interview with Mr. Koski was concluded and he was beginning to transport, there was some more information that Mr. Koski was going to give to Agent Gleason in reference to one of the whereabouts of one of the weapons. Once that was completed, I began my interview with Mr. Baker.
Was that interview recorded?
It was in a audio and video recorded interview room right headquarters.
Have her, Your Honor?
You may.
So I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 3. Identification, you recognize that?
I do. It has a CD that I have initial that has the video of Mr. Baker's interview at our police department headquarters.
Okay, does that accurately represent the interview that you did with Mr. Baker?
It does.
Your Honor, this time State Senator State's Exhibit 3.
No objection from the defense for the purposes of this hearing, Your Honor.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about while you were interviewing Mr. Koski, where was Mr. Baker?
Mr. Baker was in another area of the police department. Mr. Baker, Ms. Knight, Ms. Head, and Mr. Williams were kind of scattered about, throughout the department. Mr. Baker, if I remember correctly, I believe was in the uniform patrol, roll call room, which is in a different location in the police department. It's just outside the hallway, what we call the CID hallway, that comes to the back area where the interview rooms and the CID bullpen is at.
Okay. Was he handcuffed in that room?
No.
Was that door that he was waiting in, does it have a door?
The UPD roll call room does not have doors.
So he was not locked in there? Is that correct? Okay. Was he shackled in any way?
No.
When you went to get him, or let me ask you this, who went to get him so that you could start his interview?
I believe I went and got him, if I remember correctly.
When you went to get him, what was his demeanor like?
Seemed tired, it was a long time. We interviewed Mr. Koski for quite some time, but there was no hesitancy as far as following him.
Okay. Did he at any point during that walk from the roll call room to the interview room, did he at any point indicate to you that he'd changed his mind? That he didn't want to be interviewed?
No.
Did he at any point give you any indication, verbal or otherwise, that he was not willing to talk to you?
No.
At that point, was he in custody?
No.
At that point, was he detained?
No.
Was there anything, at that point, if he wanted to leave, could he have left?
Yes.
Was there anything that you did that indicated to him that he had to talk to you?
No.
When you went to the interview room, who was all in the interview room with you? Was it just you and Matthew Baker, or was there anyone else present?
During the entirety of the interview was on myself and Mr. Baker.
All right, I apologize, I'm having some difficulty opening. It just keeps doing that. When you click open, it just pulls up how it is. Need to save. Here, just so you can see. Okay, that's good. I can get it from there. Yes. Okay. Let's see. Now, why is it doing that? Usually I have to do that. That's not it. It makes me click on something. It makes me. I don't know why it keeps coming up with properties. That's not something that ever happens. And it makes me pull up the thing on the system. And Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'm just gonna, if the court's okay with it, I'm gonna fast forward to the part where they come in the room. Thank you. All right, Detective McCrory, who's this coming in the interview room?
There's Matthew Baker and myself.
Okay. And is Matthew Baker handcuffed?
He is not.
Okay. Are you wearing your gun at the time?
I am not.
Okay. Are you going to sit anywhere that blocks the door?
No.
Is the door locked?
He is not.
Alright. Again, we'll introduce myself again to you. So Detective McCrory, the PD. One of the things we thought about is what's been going on that happened over in Boston Gap that involved Kowski and all this other mess. Understand you at the moment you're not being charged with anything. We're just trying to get information. Alright? What is your phone?
Matthew Baker Jr.
Okay, no middle name?
Yes, sir.
What is your date?
10/9/97.
Okay. You have a phone number?
Yes, sir. I have a phone, my mom's cell phone.
Okay, what's your number?
678
Uh-huh.
94
Uh-huh.
9905.
Okay. And your address?
3300.
Uh-huh.
81.
Uh-huh. Okay. Alright, Mr. Baker, I'm gonna just cut straight to the chase, because again, I know you've been sitting here quite some time, we've been here quite a while, so we're gonna waste some time with this. I need to be honest with you, though, what you saw, what you know, because I already know.
Okay.
I know that you didn't have a gun in your hand, you didn't pull the trigger or anything. I know that.
Okay.
I know you were in the house when it happened. I know you know who did it. And what happened afterwards. From your aspect of it, to get your side of what you were told, what you knew, what was going on, I need more to hear your side from you.
Okay.
So, again, you went to this bonfire party with Kowski, or Kowski was there. You went, the girls out here, Brooke,
And
Kayla, and Jacob. The Williams, not Kowski.
Yeah.
Okay. Y'all went to this party. When y'all got to the party, what?
Nothing, we stayed outside, me, Caleb, Brooke, and Jacob stayed outside. Jude, which is Jacob's sister, she came out, I said we was there for about 10 minutes. And she said that we had to leave, quote unquote, she said that somebody had a problem with us. And then we was like, okay, we didn't have a problem, so we just left. And then we go to my house.
Right.
And so I was just, my mom come pops up at the house. And she's like, yeah, what are y'all doing? Blah, blah, blah. She seen Kayla and Brooke in the house. It's late. So she's like, they're not spending the night. And I was like, okay, they don't have to, but if they will spend the night, well, I call Jacob Bill.
Which Jacob Williams, none two.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, he spent the night. And then they got a call from Cosby talking about something, come get me. And then that's when
Y'all showed up and there's a big part of what went on when y'all showed up.
No, I didn't, like, he just painted his car.
Alright, here's the problem. There was a guy hiding, because he heard what was going on. Saw Jacob and another guy wearing a black color hoodie. Had it pulled down to the space, but apparently didn't have it pulled down far enough. Saw him come back down the hallway, apparently looking for him I assume. Identified Jacob. Identified you as the one with black color hoodie was behind Jacob walking down the hall. Okay. Some other information that I've got maybe from other sources as well as we spoke about it. Again, I remember what I told you. I know you didn't shoot anybody. I know you didn't have a gun in your hand. But I know you were in the house. And I know you saw what happened. I know you saw who did it.
Yeah, okay, well, can I say this?
Yeah.
If I say what happened is I'm gonna have, like, protection.
Yeah, you're talking about, like, make sure somebody doesn't come back after you?
Yeah, like, like today, protection.
Well, let me explain this to you. I know we've already got Coffee secured. I haven't spoken with him yet. Yeah, no, him.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't spoken with him yet, but we've got him situated somewhere. And they'll bring him to me whenever I get done, trying to get y'all situated to go.
Now, when you said to him, we're trying to get y'all situated to go, what did you mean with that?
I mean, as far as what our initial plan was, get the information that whatever we can get from you as far as what happened that night, and then get you back to I guess it was gonna be in Mr. Baker's house, and Miss Lear stated they could all come back there, that she would take them home machine gun home.
And just to be clear, you didn't Mirandize him here at the police department, is that
I did
correct?
not Mirandize him.
Why is that?
Again, he was not a suspect, he was still listed as far as a witness. I had no information that would identify him as far as a witness. I had spoken to Mr. Koski prior to speaking to Mr. Baker, but however, it was an unsubstantiated, uncooperated statement that was not evidentiary. That was not nothing of any evidentiary value that I could use to sit there and unequivocally say Mr. Baker is now a suspect that is being held, that is being detained. It was an uncooperated, unsubstantiated statement.
Okay. So at this point, Mr. Baker was not in custody?
No.
And was he in any way being detained?
No.
Okay. Was there anything about his situation from what you observed that would make anyone, think that they had to talk to you or that he had to talk to you?
No.
Based on what you observed?
No.
Understand, we can put your house and everything on our, what's called a watch list, an initial control list, have officers come out and check to make sure everything's on the up and up. Understand, we don't provide armed security, you can't have guys at the house 24/7, things like that, we still have word out. Whatever, I'm just saying, whatever information you give me, understand, I'm not gonna turn around and when I go talk to Jacob and say, all right, well, stay with us over here. Matt Baker told me this. We don't do that. If we did that, we make more work for ourselves because the same thing that you were concerned about, we got guys writing letters, this dude's talking about me and told him this, but the cops told me he told him. And then next thing you know, we got the same situation a week later, somebody trying to come retaliate for that. We don't put people's name out there in the street like that. The whole thing, our entire job is enforce laws and preservation of life. So it's not putting someone in positions where their life is in danger. Okay? I've got to know from you what was said to you, who said it, what you saw, and what you know.
Don't say nothing, or I'll shoot you too.
Who said that?
Okay?
Okay. When did he tell you this?
When I was walking up there.
Walking up the house?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, you went into the house, you went into the house for coffee?
I wasn't in the first house.
No. What did you see happen? I know it's a flash, it hits so quick. I know it's rough, but because of this and the fairness of the poor family, I need you to try to take your time. I'm not gonna sit here and say I need you to say it right now. I'm not gonna do that. Take your time. Try to come to
progression. Look at it this way, it may be easier to have you just straight talk about it constantly and hear your letter. Did you see Jacob Coffey shoot 4 people? Did you see Jacob Coffey shoot?
I didn't see him shoot.
That's more like,
Okay. I didn't see him shoot 4 people. When I seen him shoot one person, it was just like blackout.
okay.
And I was just standing there like, and this man, he's like, alright, go. And then I walked out, and then he was like, if you say anything, I will shoot you. And he had.
When I'm getting when he was calling Halen Brooke, is that her name?
Yes, sir.
That he was calling them, and he was calling to talk to you.
Exactly.
And that something about they heard something on the conversation that was like, if everybody in the house is gonna get it. And that's before y'all showed up over there.
No, okay. He said, come get me.
Mm-hmm.
And then before he didn't say what is going on.
Right.
He said, come get me. I need to arrive by 6 o'clock in the morning or now.
Okay.
And then that's when we were in my house. And then I was like, I said, Kayla and Jacob go.
Mm-hmm.
You go get them and then come. Well, he's supposed to leave with us the first time we came.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, I'm gonna stay here, no, I'm gonna stay here. So it was alright. And the sister was there, so it was okay. And then we left, came back, I walked down there, and then next thing I know, we just walked in the house. I'm thinking, this whole time, I'm gonna let you know. What he said, everybody in the house is gonna get down and they're gonna get it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, to me that means that he's sent to do something to somebody because something happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when I walk in the house and I just hear that one just, I don't know what to do.
When both of y'all got back in the car with the girls and Phil, right? When y'all left from there, where did y'all go?
He told us, he didn't tell me nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know anything.
Yeah.
It was just me. And he was like, they were like, what happened? Blah, blah, blah. And he's not telling nobody. He said, he was about me out.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm coming up in 2 minutes. And they were alright. So they're worried the whole time.
Right.
He's got a gun. What did he do? And drove. I'm still shocked. I can't come to conscious. I'm over I have a heart attack. And he's like, alright, stop the car. Stop in the middle of nowhere. Okay? And he hopped out. And then he said, you say anything, okay.
Where were you sitting in the car?
I was sitting beside him.
You were sitting beside, were you sitting in the back where he was at?
Yes.
Okay. Which side was he on, driver or passenger?
Passenger side.
Did you see him throw anything out the window while you were driving?
That's it.
When y'all dropped him off and you got back to the house, did not cross your mind then he's gone away to call 911 and report what you saw? I know you say he made a threat to you, but he's out there.
No, but
he's gone.
But it wasn't that far from my house.
What?
No, sir.
Okay. When I spoke to you out there at your house, you saw how many of us were out with him.
Oh, yeah.
Why didn't you tell me this then?
What do you mean?
Like I was trying to get your side of what was going on.
At first, I didn't know what was going on. At first, I really didn't.
Well, you saw what happened in the house.
I seen what happened in the house, but it didn't, I thought, you coming from me, thought I did it, but I was like, okay.
Let me ask you a question, because there's some other stuff I've heard. Some other cases your name popped up in, but obviously nothing serious since I had to come and snatch you out of the house. I'm hearing that you got a gangster's life affiliation.
No, sir.
You're not affiliated with GD anyway, shape?
No, sir.
Are you claiming it's that?
No, sir.
You banging it?
No, sir.
why would I be hearing that information that you and Brother Bolton, a bunch of other dudes are GDs in the area?
No, I mean, you can ask anybody, probably heard you said that, but, no, sir, I swear to you.
Have you ever been?
No, sir.
You ever claimed you for sale?
No, sir.
You know,
we had little cliques, but not a gang.
What do you mean by cliques?
Like a group of people.
Okay. Did y'all call yourself by a name?
No, we just all homeboys.
How many people were in the clique?
3, 4.
Okay. So nothing that you've done in any way, shape, or form associated with anything against your fight?
I swear to you, I stood on my grave, my sister's daughter straight. I promise.
Okay. Now, sometimes things folks just throw out there, let's say, you know, we don't get like just throwing, like, oh, yeah, that is blood, that is crack affiliated, that dude's got to go, we watch the premises shit. We don't get that much unless somebody knows the information behind it.
But if you got family members that is in the game, you would think I was in the game.
You say that you got family members that are doing?
No, yeah, I do, but I don't. Like, that's far.
Like none of them of your big homies put you on the set?
Not that far. Why would I waste my time?
You know how that type of stuff goes as a generation. There are games that have got 8, 9, 10 generations of families that roll through.
My sister just died from being in the game. I would trust me.
Where was she at when this happened?
Marietta.
Okay. Yeah, I got a little bit of a problem with all that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So again, to clarify.
I'm gonna let you know for sure. Like, once my sister died, I swear to you, no gang affiliation. I never did. I'm a free boy.
Well, some of these dudes out here now think they're pretty boys, but they're still trying to bang. Pretty boys out here listening to young thugs dressing like that, they're still out here trying to bang. It happens sometimes.
I mean, I rap, but I don't.
You part of a rap group? Or
I was a part of a rap group, but that didn't work out.
Okay.
For my sister.
How long ago was that happened?
9 months ago.
9 months?
Yeah, my sister's baby's a month old.
Okay. Alright, so to clarify, the guy that saw you in all black with the hoodie pulled over your face, that was you.
No.
The walking down the hallway after everything was shot, after the shooting stopped, walking down the hallway, not you doing him deal like looking for whoever else.
And me followed me.
Yeah.
And then I walked out the house.
Yeah. Were you in the house wearing all black with a hooded sweatshirt?
Not all of that.
Okay. But you have a black hooded sweatshirt on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, like I said, I'm not understand what I'm telling you. Everything that I told you that I know is straight up.
Yes, sir.
I know you didn't shoot.
Yes, sir.
I know you didn't have a gun in your hand.
Yes, sir.
Listen, I know what you saw, and I'm hearing. I'm hearing that you knew what was happening before you got to the house.
No. Trust me. I know it seemed like this. I knew what happened before I went to the house, but I really didn't. I did not know any of that was gonna happen.
Remember what it was? He goes on the phone and decides to come get you.
He said we're checking. I don't understand. Okay,
If he told you that we're checking him,
yeah.
okay. Did he go any further about that, or did he just say we're checking him and then didn't say anything else?
It wasn't me that talked on the phone. It's like I talked to him, but then I was only asking him where is he at and where he want me to go.
Right.
That's it. I don't know what was going on in the house before all this happened. I haven't even been there. I didn't even go in the house the first time we came.
Yeah.
So I don't know where anything is. I don't know who lives there. I don't know none of the people.
Do you remember how he got in the house?
He walked.
Like, did somebody open the door for him?
He walked in.
I'm saying, like, he didn't, like, we see this, like, in TV, they're breaking in the house, and they boot the door.
No. I didn't do that.
Did he open the door, or did somebody open the door for him?
Well, I mean, Soon as like, I don't know if he opened the door or somebody opened the door, but when the door opened, there was somebody right there.
Okay. How many guns did he have?
Two.
Okay. What kind of guns were they? Did they look like mine? Did they look like mine, the one that the cops had, or did it look like it had like a wheel in the middle of it?
Probably will. They wasn't long though.
They weren't long, they're just like,
they were small.
about like that? That?
Yeah.
Smaller?
Not smaller, the ones like that, and
Yeah.
the other one was smaller.
How close was he to the first person who got shot?
I couldn't even say.
Or was he, you think he was pretty close?
Yeah.
Like closer than the zoo house are right now?
Yes, sir.
And when was it he told you, if you say anything, I'll shoot you too, or however he worded that? When did he say that to you?
When we walked out the house.
Walked out of the house? He saying, when
We got in the car too.
when you first met him there at the house, and you met up with him, I guess, y'all were about to go over.
I was just walking into it.
I got you. But did he say anything to you outside of the house before y'all walked up to the front door?
Yeah.
What did he say?
He said, don't say anything.
Did he tell you? Did he tell you, I'm gonna get this, you don't have to do anything? That never came out of his mouth?
No.
So when you went there, you met up with him and started walking towards the house, what did you think was gonna happen?
We were just gonna have to fight some people. I didn't see the guns, I promise you.
Okay. What was he wearing? Remember if he was wearing jeans or shorts or?
I wasn't paying attention to what he was wearing, I was paying attention to his face.
Okay.
I was scared for my life, myself, like, 'cause you don't know, he could have just been like, I believe you're gonna tell, like,
Yeah.
and then he could have shot me.
Possible.
And I would have been one laying in the house.
It's possible. I've had him before around here. Okay. From all this,
Have you ever seen somebody just get shot and you just can't do nothing about it? You can't stop it. If you say anything, like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? And you shoot me.
think about what I do for a living, man. I've seen it before. I know. It's shocking.
Like 19?
It's not something normal to see.
19.
I got you. It's not something normal to see. So to clear, I want to make sure I got the words in your mouth correctly. You had no prior knowledge that he was going to that house to kill anybody who met him.
I swear to the Lord, I swear. I had no knowledge that he was going to kill anybody. And I promise.
What do you think again? Just try your word. What did you think was going to happen? Was the purpose of you meeting up with him?
He said there was 5 guys. That's all I heard. 5 guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought he got jumped. He didn't have no guns on him.
Right.
So we walked to the house. I mean, he did have guns on, but you can't see him.
Right.
And they said, no. He's like, these niggas. And then I was like, alright. And I'm still standing at the bottom of the step. I did not walk in the house when he walked in. I'm standing at the bottom of the step thinking that they're going to come out and we're going to start fighting, blah, 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 and then we leave. Okay, well, no, that's not how it went. He didn't talk.
Do you remember hearing anything after the first shot?
Multiple shots.
How many did you heard?
Maybe more than 5.
More than 5?
I'll tell you that. And every time it shot, my eyes closed. And I thought it was me. And I opened and I just see his face.
How long have you known him?
2 days ago. 3 days ago.
How do we?
My old friend.
Who's that?
Austin Trent.
Okay.
That's his brother-in-law.
Austin Trent. Okay. His brother-in-law.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
When y'all We just played basketball with him yesterday.
That's not about that, because is y'all go play basketball over there in 212?
Yeah.
212?
On, Denny Dobbs Park.
Okay.
We was over there playing basketball.
Y'all go all the way to 212?
We couldn't play around here.
Okay. For everything we spoke about, all the information you give me, to make sure again we have your side of the story documented correctly, that everything that you told us is your words. Would you willing to give me a written statement of what you saw, what went down?
Yes, sir.
Give me a second, let me go get some second forms for you. I'll give you the information that you need as far as how to fill out the top part, which is your basic information, and I'll give you as much time as you need to fill out everything.
I just really don't want any more trouble to come. I'm not saying trouble, I'm just saying like for him, like if he just bails out or something,
Well, understand this really from this aspect of it. If I speak with him, and I speak with everybody else, and I get enough information to actually charge him. We're talking about multiple people dead. You don't just bond out and stuff like that.
Exactly.
It's not like a misdemeanor weed charge or disorderly conduct. You don't just bond out for that like that.
But his sister.
I'm fully aware of the sister situation, because that's my case too.
Okay.
I got her on case too. That one was a little bit different on the aspect of, fortunately, nobody died. But that one was the family put themselves in a bit of a financial strain to get her out of there.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was going to be easy. She was in there for a while. The other two people that were with her are still in there.
Yeah.
It's not.
I didn't know if he had money like that to get his.
There's not that many people around here that got money like that. Yeah, if he gets charged for stuff like this, there's not that many people walking around the gun when they can start to get out on those long sides.
He must have.
But he knows somebody that's over the bank. I mean, they bank.
Did he tell my address?
Well, again, understand, I can't make any sort of promises that won't happen. All I can tell you is, understand, any situation you want out of this, there are people out here in the world that are just looking to prey on people regardless. For whatever reason, looking to treat all it is they see people as easy targets. So you want out of somebody that had need to be, you walk on the street and car runs up on you, Jackson for your hand, Jackson for your shoes, your wallet, phone, watch, whatever. Just you be cognizant about what's around you. See, don't walk around with your head down. Stuff like that. We can do things as far as trying to keep your house, keep watching your house, so nobody comes by and tries to shoot in the house or breaking in the house or something like that. But again, from your aspect of it as well, with you, your mother, and your sister with her child there.
That's only concern is my sister, because my sister stayed home by herself with the baby. A lot of times.
So I'm saying, that's one of the things we can do more as to it, just to kind of keep up presence, keep all that mess from happening. Again, I can, all day long, I can sit there, if I talk to him and tell him, hey, look, nobody better go over to us and go back to his house. That's just me telling him that. He can decide to say, listen to their house. But, just understand, I'm not going to place you out to a position to where you're knowingly in harm's way. I said, throw your name out there, you told me this, you told me that, you said this, you did that, but I'm not gonna do that to you. I don't go back and tell people what other people told me. I don't put people's names in the street because it don't work like that. If I start doing that, nobody's ever gonna talk to us. And a lot of times I find people who are doing that, I gotta have people talk to them. I'm not gonna put you in any sort of harm's way. I throw your name out there. Plaster your picture all over this room, wherever I get him in here. He sees your picture and I start pointing. He told me this, I'm not gonna do that, man. Unless y'all start telling people what you said.
I'm not.
I
can't talk about it.
I'm saying, unless you start around some people what you said, I'm not gonna go around some people what you said. There's no way I'm gonna find out if you say something.
I don't know how to stop it. That's the only thing I think about every day.
I couldn't sleep last night.
It wasn't like think about. Okay.
I didn't think about having to
What, they're trying to run? Are you in the house, you had shot, you're behind him.
He was shot.
Did he have his back to you? Was he still facing you?
When he walked in the house, I'm on the bottom step, looking up, and all I hear is, ah. I run up steps, and I just see, pow, 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 and it just kept going. And then he said, come on. And then we went to the back, and then he's like, all right, let's go. And then before we walked out, the guy probably heard it. He said, you think I'm gonna shoot you. If you think that he just shot all of them with no hesitation, I'm not going to blame him out for my life. I mean, I was thinking about it so much that I was thinking about it, but then I was scared that I was going to get charged for being there. And not only just charged for being there, charged for not stopping.
Right.
But there was no way I could stop it. He's way bigger than me. He hasn't been in pain for a long time. There's nothing I can do to stop what he
Alright, hang tight a second, I'm gonna get you some statement forms, so you can fill that mess out. I'm gonna look at some other stuff, because I got tons of people working on different stuff, see if they got any new information for me, and then I'll make it clear to all of you. So I get statement forms, like you get time to work on that, too, bottled water, or anything like that.
I have no old room over there, but
I get you. Like I said, you get that filled out, we'll get this taken care of, so we can figure out what else I gotta move on to, man.
like,
Alright?
but please,
Oh yeah, man, I'm not gonna throw your name out there.
thank you.
Man, I'm gonna throw your name.
Sergeant LaCroix, when you left that room, did you have to unlock the door in any way, or was it already unlocked?
It was already unlocked.
So during the whole time that you were speaking to Matthew Baker, that door was unlocked?
There was.
Just to be clear, does that door have a lock on it?
It does have a locking mechanism from the outside. You cannot lock it from within the room.
Easy another time. You know where we're at next time, that's gonna be my first interview is you, your address, CV, all this, don't worry about social security number, date of birth here, if you have them for you, you can put it on there. You put your mother's phone or whatever. In details is where I need you to tell me the story. The details you can be, you get it in. I'll come here, check on you here a little bit. If you need more paper, I'll break it to you.
So, from when we first got to the bonfire before anything just happened?
Like, yeah.
Or from?
No, I from the beginning, like, y'all showed up, Jake Koski was there, to all, however y'all ended up getting over there. Like, the phone call had invited you, whatever, start from that to the sign, so we ended up all the way back to where we're at. I'll come back and check on you here in a minute.
And then Sergeant McCrory, does he start rating his statement then at that point?
He does.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'm gonna fast forward. It's a while he's writing.
Okay, by me.
Okay, thank you. Just to be clear, for the record, there's nobody else in the room with him as he's writing, and other than him writing and walking around, there's nothing else that happens. Sergeant LaCroix, while we're waiting, I know he's going to move in a moment, but before he does, did you ever come back into the room to start talking to him again?
I did not.
Okay. And so did that conclude your interview with him?
That did conclude my interview with him.
So I have no issue if you want this one. This is the completed version.
Yeah, that's what I did. This is the one that he wrote.
This is the completed one. So if I put one in there, in the evidence, it would be the complete one.
Do you want me to use your version?
I mean, I can put it in on cross. Either
No, I'm
one.
going to put it in, but if you object to this one, do you want me to put that one in?
As long as you have your should be Martin on cross. I mean, it's the same benefit.
May I have a moment?
Either way, it doesn't matter to me.
That one in the clubhouse, I can just put in mine. I don't know. You can put it up in order. No, that's fine. I'm gonna go with the original plan, Your Honor. May I have her to witness?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So I'm gonna show you, is this the statement that was handed off to you that Matthew Baker wrote? Got a copy of that statement?
It is.
Does it accurately show the statement that Matthew Baker himself wrote?
It is.
Or at this time, State Tender States Exhibit 4.
No objections for the purposes of this hearing.
All right, it'll be admitted.
And permission to publish to the court? I guess, may I approach her?
You may.
Thank you.
All right, if you could tell her with me. Thank you.
Sergeant McCrory, did you ever come back into the room? I know you said you didn't question Matthew Baker any further, but did you ever come back into the room and interact with him in any way?
I did not.
Okay. And during that time period, were you speaking to other officers?
I was speaking with my command staff.
Fast forward a little bit again. Sergeant McCrory, when you left that last time after you had brought back the clipboard and the pen and the paper, whatever it was for him to write his statement, when you left that time, did you lock that door?
I did.
Okay. And to your knowledge, did you tell Matthew Baker that you were locking the door?
I did not.
Okay. And based on your observation of his behavior when he goes to the door, which we'll see in a few moments, did he know that the door was locked?
He did not.
And how do you know he did not know that the door was locked?
Again, going back as far as watching the videos, and he goes to the door and tries to, he hears the conversation outside that we heard, and he tries to open the door.
Now, during that period of time, had you made the decision based on what you learned from the witness who was in the house, based on what Jacob Koski had told you, what Matthew Baker told you, had you made the decision at that point to charge Mr. Baker?
Not at that point. There was still a conversation going as far as there were some discrepancies in the statements that were given to us by the other parties as far as that weren't aligning with everything else with all the other statements that we had gotten. So we were addressing as far as from the scene evidence, statement, the testimonial evidence, what we got from the people that already been spoken on top of as far as what we have with Mr. Baker, and seeing the outliers in these other statements. From there, the detectives that were interviewing those people went back to address that. And once that was addressed and everything was clarified to where things were starting to line up from where the scenes as far as we're seeing, is where the discussion and the decision were made to apply the charges to the other remaining subjects, including Mr. Baker.
Okay, when you're talking about the other subjects, are you talking about
Miss Head, Miss Knight, and Mr. Williams.
Okay. And then based on some of the things that Matthew Baker told you himself, how they lined up with what you knew from the scene, with what others said, did you then decide to charge him with murder as well?
I did.
Okay. At any point prior to that time when Mr. Baker got up and recognized that after he'd given his verbal statement to you, after he completed his written statement,